Welcome to Eno. We're so glad to have you here. If you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, it's nice to see so many people come out for this important hearing. It's important to us to get your opinion. Oh, dear. Speak really close, yeah. Good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see everyone here tonight and for you to come out for this very important hearing. We're interested in what you have to say. We make better decisions when we hear from you and understand all the issues that are out there. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. We're going to give a shorter summary than what we did last time on the presentation of where we are with the Senior Center. And the reason why we're doing that is to try and get everyone on the same page. We have been considering mainly two sites, Eno, doing either a full addition here or a partial addition, or the state lot site behind Bank of America, and that's the site that was recommended by the building committee. The building committee throughout the past 4 years has looked at additional sites, including Stratton Brook, the Performing Arts Center, some land by the sewer, the Performing Arts, the Parks and Recreation area. So there have been other sites evaluated as well, and I'd like to thank all the volunteers on the building committee. And I'm trying to talk much louder. On the building committee and the subcommittee who have done such hard work. So we'll begin with Jeff to do a quick presentation, then we'll go right to public hearing. We're interested in what you have to say, and we'll go as long as we need. There's not gonna, we'll let everyone speak for 5 minutes. Once everyone's spoken, if someone wants to speak again, you'll have that opportunity again, and we'll go as long as we need to make sure everyone gets a chance to be heard. Jeff, thank you.
Good evening. At the last Board of Selectmen meeting, the board asked us to go back and take a look at the program. Sorry about that. Test. Mark, you got that, or?
It might be better to hold it.
Hold it?
Yeah.
Starting from the beginning, at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, the board asked staff to go back and look at the program that was developed for the Senior Center project to see what was extremely important or what was the needs and what was the optional or the wants as part of the program. So over the last couple of weeks, we've been meeting with the architect that worked on the project, Tom Arcari, with Quisenberry Arcari Architects, who prepared the original concept plans, and also met with the Senior Center staff to try to get a better feel for what was important for the core operation of the Senior Center and what potentially could be deleted from the program or considered less important. So let me start with the presentation. Some of this information you've seen before. This was data that was collected by Senior Center staff that shows the number of users of the facilities presently, with an overall 984 unique users based on the data that they collected, and about 159 average users a day at the facility. The trends for the demographics in town, based on census data and other data sources, was that senior population over 55 was going to increase to the 2025 year, and after that point it was going to start decreasing. So over the next 10 years there would be an increase of almost 40 to 50% in the senior population. This is hard to read, I know, but this is a typical calendar that's developed on a monthly basis by Senior Center staff. A unique user is one individual person. In other words, he's not counted twice. That 900 plus people or persons, use the Senior Center. It's not a double count, so to speak. So this is a current programming for a typical month at the Senior Center. I know you can't read it, but what it illustrates is There's multiple events that occur at this facility at the same time. So the need for programming space, again, is at a premium with the spaces that are available right now. The current challenges at this site are insufficient parking. There's presently 40 spaces in the rear of the property. Insufficient arts and crafts storage and large event space. There's meal service limitations. Presently, a lot of the meals or all the meals are cooked off-site and brought in. There's limitations on exercise classes, TV and movie rooms, health and wellness screening spaces, and there's also no room for games, billiards, ping pong, etc. Circling back with the senior center staff, these were some of the core needs, the essential needs that they felt were required at a facility that presently weren't available. They needed additional parking. They needed improved ADA accessibility, and as everyone knows, it's not fully accessible presently. Tom, you can come right down here. That's all right. They need a covered drop-off area and a drop-off area at grade for dial-a-ride clients that use the facility. They need a larger multi-purpose room that's flexible, that has a full kitchen, full commercial kitchen. They needed additional programming room in consideration of their scheduling of events. And they needed a fitness room and a wellness space, which they felt was critical to the needs of the seniors. In addition, the food closet, the community food closet, needed additional space. Presently, it's in a very limited space, and it's over-programmed. There's really no space for storage in there presently, so they need a larger closet. The way we approached this project and the way the architect approached it was through a comparative analysis of other facilities at other towns. They also went through a rigorous process of identifying the actual square footage is required for the various events. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Tom Arcaria with Quisenberry Arcaria Architects. He'll tell you a little bit more about that process.
Great, thank you. Sorry for the tardiness. I got everything right except the location. I should have known they were renovating the town council chambers anyways. So we've been working on the program analysis for a number of years, and when we evaluated the program, we looked at it from three main perspectives. The first of which is we engaged ourselves in the activities here at the center, physically taking part in the activities, seeing how the rooms work, the spaces work, seeing how the programs are run, and really getting a feel for what the needs of the programs are and what the shortfalls of the spaces here at the center are. The second approach we took was to actually work specifically with the administration to find out where are we going, what are your program needs, how are your programs limited, where do they need to grow, what do you need to make them grow, and what do you need to physically meet their needs currently. The third step we do is to look at other centers. We've done more than 30 senior centers throughout the state of Connecticut. We look at other communities that are similar to yours in demographic and size and community breakup. And we compare what your needs are to theirs as sort of a double check to see what makes sense. After doing the analysis, we identified there were a number of components that were significant musts that you add to your program. Jeff mentioned some of those just before I came in. But we ultimately determined the program needs was approximately 22,000 square feet for your center. So over the last few years, we've studied a number of different options, one of which is renovating Eno Hall. Others include building new facilities at various sites throughout the community. We did site selection for that process. But in the last 6 months, we've been asked to take a hard look at the Eno Memorial Hall scheme. How can we make the original approach more cost-effective, maybe more viable? Why don't we take a good hard look at the wants and identify what truly are needs, what truly are wants, and how can we make this project financially viable for the community? So we explored 3 different schemes of renovating Eno Hall. The first scheme was the original renovation scheme, which involved significant additions. The second scheme was a scheme where we cut the program back significantly, making some choices about what could be flexible space, what could potentially be omitted from the program. Then we met with administration. We reviewed our program study and identified the things that really can't be cut from the program. What are the key essential elements? And we added a little bit more program back in to meet what we think are the crucial needs going forward. And that scheme was Scheme 3. Which resolved in a program square footage of about 17,300 square feet. Right. What we identified as the essential needs of the center were a key lobby reception area. You don't have this now. You need a spot where you can pre-function all of your programs. You can wait for rides. You can have a drop-off area. A covered safe area that would serve dial-a-ride. This space would also be center of socialization for the facility and would include a small cafe area and gallery. Dedicated game room is something you don't have. And then activities, library, multi-purpose room, and kitchen. The multi-purpose room expansion is one of the key program needs. Right now, you don't have the capacity to meet your current luncheon program needs, and realistically, it needs to be expanded. Accessible toilets. Health screening is a definite need. You don't have a dedicated space for that right now. The food pantry will remain here at the center. And then finally, probably what our study identified as the most crucial component that needs to be added is programming space for fitness and exercise. Fitness and exercise programs are becoming a major component of senior center programming. They are essential not only to the health and well-being of the patrons, but also the growing health and well-being of the community, and are a key contributor to our quality of life and the expand our lifespan, our prolonged life. Some of the wants that were hard choices to make in terms of removing these elements from the plan included a dedicated senior store. I believe that in time we could find a place for this. Some centers use display area to serve the same goal. Private toilet space for the administrative offices. This is a want. Dedicated billiard or table game room. This is something that could be accommodated in the soft classroom. We're going to move administration from the library space, and there could be dedicated table games there. A dedicated music classroom. This is something that we try and provide for a lot of centers, but it is a bit of a wish list item. We can accommodate the music programming in a number of flexible spaces here at the center. And then a hair salon space. Sometimes the health screening room can be used as dual function to serve this need. Sure.
How do you ascertain the difference between
Excuse me, do you mind, that's a great question. Can we get through, and I know I'd asked for about a 10-minute presentation, so if we can kind of...
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The primary purpose is to hear from the residents, but we do, and I just want to clarify, the Board of Selectmen at our last meeting did ask for this additional information on Eno. It does not mean that we're choosing Eno by any means. The same analysis could be applied to the state lot site and the reduced building there. So it's not an indication of anywhere we're going. This was just a request made by members of the Board of Selectmen at the last meeting. So we'll get to public audience quickly.
Thank you. There's a lot of information here, so I apologize. So this revised scheme includes an addition on the north side of the center. You can see Eno here is in the orangish color, and the addition is in the tan color. The addition would feature a drop-off and turnaround area along Station Street, which would provide accessible access, and 3 bays of parking in this particular scheme at grade. One of the ways we made the scheme more cost-effective was that the original addition schemes wrapped around the end of the building and required the displacement of the existing mechanical system. By limiting the additions to the north side of the building only, we saved a significant amount of money just in construction only. The lower level floor plan will feature an entry lobby on the north side of the building and an entry vestibule. From that entry lobby, which has seating, cafe, and access to the administration on the right side of the plan, you would pass through that lobby into the multifunction space, which would be an expansion of the existing multipurpose room below us, and it would essentially take the space of this auditorium and would seat about 150 people. There would be new administration space in the upper right-hand corner, and then below that would be black box space for the SCTV. The upper level would have the fitness and exercise space, and look down on the entry lobby below. And then finally, we explored provision of a new senior center on the Iron Horse Boulevard site. This would be a 22,000 square foot building with full site amenities, full access, single story, with a floor plan that matches the program needs assessment exactly.
Thanks, Tom. These are just some of the updated costs based on the reduction in the program that we worked on over the last couple of weeks. The original addition was 22,000 square feet. It was reduced down to 8,100 square feet with the additional space for the SCTV. So the updated estimates with the parking deck are 7.2 million. Without the parking deck, 6.2 million. We've also looked at the DOT sites, and those numbers have really held the same for the present time. We think they could be reduced to some degree, but those numbers are within the range of budget that we feel are necessary for those particular facilities. Again, just a review of the cost to the average taxpayer based on the property tax assessment of, say, $300,000, for example. The total impact of a property owner over 10 years would be $1,208 or $10.07 a month. And that's it.
Thank you for that presentation. Thank you for your work on it. We appreciate that you were willing to go back. I know that the state lot site is still at 22,000 square feet, but obviously if we can reduce Eno to 17, you could likely do the same at the scene. Yes?
The reason it's easy for us to reduce the square footage at the Eno site is there is ancillary space here that can be used for flexible reasons. For flexible functions. I do think that there's a possibility the new facility could be reduced in size. I was saying the reason we could make the facility 17,000 square feet is because there is existing ancillary space that could pick up programs on a flex time usage, whereas a standalone new building, if you wanted all the programs to fit within, it would be harder to make it smaller. It could be reduced, but not to the same degree.
Okay, thank you. So we'll begin with public audience. Joan. You're welcome. Could you please state your name for the town clerk over there and your address? And then she's going to write it down, but as you finish up, if you can just go by her and confirm that she's got your right name and address, that would be great.
Thank you. Joan Coe, 26 Whitcomb Drive. Before we rush to judgment, there are other options that could be available at a greatly reduced cost. One option is to find a place for SCTV, leaving 1,600 square feet of space in Eno, and adding additional space for the senior center. At this time, there might be an option at another facility incorporating SCTV into a media community center at a greatly reduced cost. The cost for the renovation at Eno would cost no more than $200,000. I have discussed this issue of a senior center with many seniors and other residents, and they do not want to spend $8 million for a new facility and are in favor of keeping the senior center with improvements at Eno. The senior center options has come before the public for discussion over a long period of time without a consensus. I feel that the plan that I have investigated is fiscally responsible and would become a collaborative effort for SCTV, the town, the school, and the community. This collaborative effort that I have worked on for several months should be finalized in a timely manner. There are several sign-offs that are required before full disclosure is made public. Please don't rush to judgment. I'll put my comments on www.simsbury.com, Simsbury Topics, and of course on Simsbury Patch for your review. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Joan. And if you could just confirm she's got the right address for you on the way.
She lives on my street.
All right. I guess we got that, right? Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Ferg.
Ferg Jansen, 3 Fox Inn, West Simsbury. A lot of people in this room know a lot more about the specifics of this project than I do, and if I was smart, I'd be in the Bahamas rather than here tonight. But sometime last year, Bob Hensley addressed you and said, why don't we think about the word community center rather than senior center? Now, when I become a senior, I would like to be able to park at ground level, and I'd like to be near where they're playing soccer, a dog park, a playground, like the activities I do with my grandchildren. I don't want to be sequestered away. The town owns property where performing arts is, and they have dual needs, and if we can share with a public-private enterprise and have contributions, we could save, I feel, a lot of money for taxpayers. Plus, the land is already owned by the town. You don't have to buy it. And with the needs that were listed here by the architect, those could go very well in a ground level building and I think satisfy the town's needs. And people smarter than me say also that new construction's cheaper in the day and age now than doing renovations. And maybe it's not all out of Eno or all down there, but maybe there's a way we can have our cake and eat it too, and have a community center for all of us rather than just an isolated senior center. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kalishman.
You'll be hearing more from the president of the because I'm running for selectman, so look at my... No, this is first time. Now I guess we can start my time. You know, let me tell you people something. There's not anybody in this room that did any more, that knows any more about this study than you do. You know, people that did the study, they're not any smarter than what you are. And we have people in this room that there's no question they're smarter than the people that are doing this study. And the point I'm going to bring out to you people, let's look at the board. We're asking this board to make a decision for us, the elderly, and I'll bet you if I poll each and every board member, there's not one person that's over 60 years old, but yet they're going to make a decision for me. They don't know what it takes to drive after 6 o'clock or during the winter time. So if you're going to a senior center out in the woods, who's going to drive you there? Who's going to pick you up there? Your children aren't going to do it. They don't do it now. They're not going to do it then. So, you know, we have to look at this thing logically, and we're not. And the next thing, in all due respect to the architect and his firm, this has been studied to death. And I'm not even counting this charrette and the other studies. It's been studied to death. And he's a very good man, and he knows his business. And I sat in the audience time and time and time again when he gave his project studies and his recommendations as an expert. And now, all of a sudden, I thought it was all resolved, and at the last minute, the good old boys want to change it. Somebody feels that it's not meeting their liking, so they want to put it out in the woods. This is the logical place, is this building. This building. And the study goes, forget about what you're going to put in the building. What we should be interested in and what you should be asking is, what's the square footage of the first floor? What's the square footage of the second floor? And if we want to go out, how many square feet can we go out if we knock down this wall, and where the bearing walls are, and how many feet we can go to the other end? And then, like he's recommended, he wanted to go out in the back, and it would be we control the street back there. He can go back as far as he wants and put in whatever storage or whatever additional square footage you may need. Now, the last 6 months, this was all resolved. And I go to the Board of Selectmen meetings religiously, each and every meeting. And 6 months ago, the first selectman wanted to start changing things, and things started changing. It wasn't the people that wanted to change. The first selectman wanted to change. And she brought in Mr. Sawicki, and they started doing the hocus pocus. Still, and he's sitting here tonight. I asked that this building be air conditioned, and it was never, they never paid any attention to me. And I can produce articles in the Hartford Current that will show you where I asked to have this building air conditioned. And what I was told, well, we got the channels and we have this and we're going to do this part, and like everything else, you did it bit by bit, or they tried to do it bit by bit, and the fire curtain that was supposed to go here ended up somewhere else, and this is what's been going on. You have to decide. You want this building, they're here, tell them you want the building, and let's have it here, let's start something. What are you going to do? You're going to go to the woods and walk around? You want to come here, you want to go to the exercises, you want to go shopping, whatever you want to do, you want to visit town hall, it's all here. You don't need to go to the woods. And this is what you have to do. And you're the people that have to demand it, not them. Because next year you can throw them out, and I think half of them should go anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Kalishman.
Thank
We're
you.
happy to have you.
I
continue
haven't
your remarks.
finished, but...
We'll let you come back and finish
Okay,
after everyone
thank
else has a chance. Is there anyone else? You're welcome. Yes.
Hi, my name is Ellie Hoffman. I'm from Terriffill, and I'm representing the Women's Club this evening. We're pleased to support the need for the senior center, but based on the proposed siting on the DOT lot, we have some concerns. We're heading into our 46th year of our annual Arts and Crafts Festival, and we've been very lucky for many, many years to be able to use that site for our arts and crafts. The site's been valuable because it's paved, it's level, it meets the needs not only of our vendors for easy accessibility, but it also is easy for all the visitors that come to town to the show. It's handicapped accessible. People can get along easily on canes and wheelchairs and whatnot. The suggestion was made once that perhaps we need to move over to the performing arts location. Unfortunately, though, there's nothing paved there for us. It's a grassy site. It means it makes it difficult for handicapped people to get around. Our vendors are used to parking at their sites. You've got an irrigation system there. I don't think they would let people, 120 vendors with different sized vehicles, trucks and whatever, be mobile there. So we have some concerns about what the future lies for us if one of the sites is deemed to be the DOT lot. Again, we recognize the need for the senior center, but we hope that we can work with the town and find perhaps another site that can meet our needs, not the senior center needs, but our needs as an entity which brings good things to the town. We give back to the town every year in the form of scholarships and in donations to civic organizations such as the Senior Center, VNA, the Ambulance Association, SCTV, and so forth. Over the 45 years that we've been involved with the town in the arts and crafts, we've donated back about $500,000. So we think we are valuable to the town, and we would like to continue to be valuable to the town, but just raise the concern about the site availability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Mark Ornstein. I have lived at 82 Old Meadow Plain Road in Weetog since 1972, and as you can see, I'm a senior. I am a member of the Aging and Disability Commission and had been a member of the 2 senior center subcommittees while they existed. I firmly believe that a new single-level building best fits the needs of the seniors. I also believe that from a capital perspective, a new building is most effective. Finally, I have a strong respect for the plans that you came up with. I feel that the 2013 site plan space layout for Eno, the full build-out would work. I have a sense I cannot comment yet on any reduced proposal for Eno. I've seen one, and that's probably going to work also. However, what I can comment on is the parking platform. Any proposed parking platform for Eno that I have seen, including conceptual drawings received from Jeff Shea on February 11th, is, I believe, unsafe for seniors. Unsafe for seniors, based on criteria that I'll go over. In February 2013, the Aging and Disability Commission sent a memorandum to the Board of Selectmen and the Public Building Commission, which indicated concerns about the parking platform and requested further detail. At the 5/29/2014 Board of Selectmen meeting and hearing, Rick Zawitsky said that the parking platform had not been looked at in depth. Isn't this placing the cart before the horse? Before expansion or remodeling of Eno is considered, shouldn't there be an understanding of adequate, safe parking for seniors at Eno? The following is taken from a parking structure design guidelines document for the city of Lincoln, Nebraska, prepared by Carl Walker, Inc., a national engineering and parking consulting firm. Advantages of one-way traffic flow. Easier for parkers to enter, exit parking spaces. Vehicles are more likely to be centered in angled spaces. Less circulation conflict and reduced potential for accidents. Better visibility when backing out of a stall. Separation of inbound and outbound traffic and improved flow capacity. The intended traffic flow is self-enforcing. One-way traffic allows the angle of parking to be changed to accommodate changes in vehicle sizes. I'm going to continue from this document. One-way traffic flow should never be combined with 90-degree parking, perpendicular parking. In parking facilities with one-way traffic flow, the angle of the parking stall establishes the direction of the vehicle traffic. That's the end of that part. Another document. Research has shown that seniors, while driving or walking, are in most danger, 1, in intersections, 2, backing up a vehicle, or as a pedestrian walking in the path of a backing vehicle, 3, in winter months visibility. So I'm going to address number 2. Seniors typically have restricted neck mobility and high reaction times. As pedestrians walking to and from their cars, seniors may have some ambulatory unsteadiness and may pay more attention to their footing rather than their surroundings. One-way aisles and diagonal parking stalls make it easier for the senior to pull in and safer to back out. When backing out, there's a better view and less wheel turning to then move forward and exit. I assume you've all seen one of the sketches for this. On each level is a single entrance exit. Okay, so let's take 11:30, lunchtime, a lunch. People start driving in, coming into these spaces, maybe 10 of. The platform is filled. What's the senior going to do? Back out? Is there going to be some signage? You're going to have a monitor, a policeman out there? Is the senior going to make a K-turn? Do you know what a K-turn is? A 3-point turn? In the aisle? I don't think so. I think you're going to have to give up a couple of spaces on each level if you're going to provide one entrance and one exit. That's combined. I think it's a real danger. The proposed parking platform has a single combined entrance exit per level, and therefore necessitates a two-way flow with 90-degree parking. Before the start of an event, what does the senior do if all the spaces on the level are occupied?
Mr.
Back out?
Ornstein, thank you.
I'll come back.
Yeah, we'll have you come back. Thank you. After everyone's had an opportunity to speak. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yes, John.
Good evening. I'm John Schaefer, 16 Lossbrook Road, West Simsbury, Connecticut. I wish to make to comment on the issue of whether or not the town should construct a new senior center or an addition to the existing senior center. There are some issues that I feel are needed to be addressed. The first issue concerns the program for the senior center. The program for a building should be prepared by a third party, someone who does not have a vested interest in the outcome of the program. It should not be the building design team. Without the checks and balances of a third party, the program can become inflated. We need to ensure that the activities included in the program are true needs and not just wishes. The second issue concerns the Iron Horse Boulevard, Mallway, Wilcox Street site. The site between Mall Way and Wilcox Street appears to be an acceptable option, but the town will have to assume the cost of maintaining a new building and may not actually need all the additional space. The third concern that I have, or third issue, concerns the zoning of the Mall Way Wilcox site. This site is covered by the Simsbury Center code portion of the Simsbury zoning regulations. The form-based code calls for a 4-story building that extends to the sidewalks and accommodates a mix of uses. During the charrette, that site was specifically discussed as having potential for private development that would add to the town's tax base. The latest conceptual building site design does not comply with the code. If the town wishes to use that site, it should enter into an agreement with a developer such that the town retains the first floor for the senior center. The construction of an addition to and the renovation of Eno Hall seems to still be the best solution. I hope the Board of Selectmen will keep these issues in mind during their deliberations on the future of the town's senior center. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there any, yes, Judy.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Judy Schaefer, 16 Lost Brook Road, West Simsbury. This is a small point, but I don't think it's been brought up yet. In some of the previous sketches of either a new senior center or an addition to the back of Eno, they refer to a multi-purpose room. For probably 30 years now, we've had schools that have multi-purpose rooms and where the doors collapse and move back and forth. I think we have to look at that carefully because there's so many classes that the administration here have to get into. It's very difficult. For example, you couldn't have Tai Chi next door to the tap dance class because of the music and the noise, and you couldn't have yoga next to the music room. So when we say a multi-purpose room, that makes me a little nervous because some of the facilities I've seen that have a multi-purpose room, there's one big room with these little teeny rooms all around, and a lot of these small rooms and the sizes I've seen would not accommodate a lot of our exercise classes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. We'll go, I'm going back and forth, so we'll go right there. Yep. Yep, Don. Thanks, Judy.
Don Zahler, 1 West Street. I'm here as a taxpayer, obviously a senior, and a member of the subcommittee that embarked on the study of what should we do with the senior center. Undoubtedly, this particular location, Eno Hall, is a great, perfect spot for it. It has one problem, and I think you're seeing it today: parking. Parking. The reason we had the study is because parking is a problem. And there is only so much land. God went out of business. He's not creating anymore. This is all we have. And it was agreed that a minimum, right now, we need 100 parking spaces. And then looking downstream, when the demographics show that the senior population is going to grow, we need a site that can handle at least up to another 100 places. You can't do that here. You can't even get 100. Mr. Sawitsky here in May of last year at a public meeting said this facility will not accommodate 100 spaces. And I think he's right here to reinforce that if you question my quote. What he did say is that at best he could accommodate 74. But I hate to nitpick you, but we can't even do that, okay? And this is going to pick up on some of your comments. we're talking about a parking deck. We've had 3, maybe 4 different versions of parking decks. None of them, of course, they don't reach the 100, because you can't do that. And they don't even reach the 74. Now, here's the latest example, or one of the recent examples. February of last year, of 13. Can you pick this up on the tube? Oops. The proposal is to have Station Street, two-way street. I don't know that thing going to be accomplished, but, you know, I'm digressing here. Here, I'll do it this way. How's that? So, here are the entrances that this gentleman referred to. Station Street, we come in here on a ramp, enter into the parking area, and as he mentioned, there are programs here that start, let's say, at 2 o'clock, and you get 20 people coming in for the 2 o'clock program. They'll probably come in, you know, close to one another. So if they enter in and find out that the parking is all filled up, their option here is to back out. Now, you know, that's not going to happen. You know, one person pulls in, the other one behind her, the other one again. You know, it's crazy. So you're going to lose these 4 parking spaces, because what they'll have to do is come in, pull it this way, back in here, and then go out. That'll be a happy camper. So you're losing these 4 places. So the 36 is not 36, it's 4 less. So now let's project this same layout down below to the below-grade parking. You're going to lose these 3 spots because you need some room for somebody to get in. And then as you come in, you've got the same problem that you had at the other level. You're going to lose some parking spaces here and go through all the other trauma again. So once again, you know, if you could make the parking work, then you could probably, you know, make this building work. But you can add all the extra square feet into this building that you want, but if you can't get the people here to park and get into it, it's a wasted space. So why we are even considering this facility is absolutely beyond me. To spend $7-8 million, I don't know what the latest number is, I couldn't read them on the board, for a facility that, number one, you're not going to have enough parking to begin with, and number 2, as the community grows, there's nowhere to add additional parking that you may need. It's just astonishing to me that it's even under consideration. And as a subcommittee, and in our subcommittee meetings as early as 2011, we told the administration, Eno is not going to work, and yet they persist. We've had all parking schemes that...
Thank you, Mr. Zahler. If you'd like to come back at the end after everyone's had a chance to speak, we'd be happy.
Mary Lou, could you yield your time to me, please?
No, we'll go. Well, there are other people who may want to speak. We'll come back to you. We're going to stay here as long as everyone
I'm on a
needs.
roll.
I know you are. You are, and I love you. But have a seat. We'll come back to you. Promise. We're not leaving until everyone feels they've had their say. So no worries, no rush. All right, we started over there. Moving. Okay, go ahead.
David Beard, 82 Grapevine Road.
I think she's taking me right there. Thank you. Is she taking the name?
No, that's okay. We got it.
We got it? Okay. You're taking names?
You're good.
Now you are.
First of all, I'm a little confused. I understand we have 159 average daily users here in the senior center. We have 6,960 people here in 2015. That means there's a very small percentage of us using the senior center. Do we have a need to build this new senior center for 6,900 people, or 9,100 people that we have on here, or 8,300 people? with only 159 people using it weekly. Talking about getting the cart in front of the horse, I don't understand how we've gotten this far so soon without a public vote. I mean, we had an election here a year or two ago, and it should have been on the ballot whether the people in the town of Simsbury want us to go ahead with this. We spent, I don't know if we spent that $250,000 that John Hampton got for us, but it just seemed like a hell of a lot of money to spend, and we don't even know if the people are really going to approve it. I think Tom, right? Tom talked about common sense. That's not much common sense when we're spending all this money and having all these meetings and all these studies, and we don't even know where we're going today after all this time. Joan Cole had a very good idea. I don't think we can make the improvements here for $200,000, and we certainly need some kind of parking. Now, most of us seniors, if we're driving a car, we should be able to park the car. I don't know how we go to Hartford or any other town where we have to go up ramps, go to Hartford Hospital or St. Francis. We park our car, we back out, go where we have to go, and I don't think very many of us are having all these accidents. So I don't understand why we can't make this. I think you talked about coming in at ground level for handicapped people. And of course, Joan mentioned about moving the television people somewhere else, which would open up a lot more space. And let's see, bids. Like the gentleman said over here before, we need a third party. I think we need several bids to find out if we're in the same ballpark. I mean, I used to work for ShopRite, and I opened up a lot of stores with ShopRite. We basically knew how much we were going to spend, and many times we get a surprise when we put it out to bid. Sometimes it was good, and sometimes it wasn't. But you don't put all your eggs in one basket. We never did, and I don't think we should here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bear.
Okay, my name is David Bear, 82 Great Pond Road, Simsbury.
Thank you. All right, we were sort of over here by Sylvia. Anyone on this side who wants to speak? Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm here representing Main Street, the Board of Main Street, Simsbury Main Street Partnership. Nord Christensen, 35 West Mountain Road. They've put together a letter they've asked me to read to you, or we have. Since our founding in 1995, the primary purpose of the Simsbury Main Street Partnership has been to promote the historic preservation, protection, and use of the Simsbury traditional downtown area, including that area's commercial, civic, religious enterprises, and residences. Our 20 years of work in the community reflects our dedication to these dual objectives: historic preservation, economic development. Now, many people might see these as opposing goals. So look at this choice between using historic building versus a new center in terms of economic and physical responsibility. Historic preservation creates jobs. Dollar for dollar, renovating Eno will create more jobs than new construction, and they will more likely be local workers than entirely in new construction. A greater percentage of every dollar spent goes to labor, 60 to 70%, and less in materials, 30 to 40%, whereas new construction is about 50-50. Historic preservation also stimulates tourism and compatible land use partners. A new building will occupy a prime site of economic development, and no tourist will care. Historic buildings provide
efficient space for new uses. Imaginative reuse of the space in Eno Hall is limited only by the talent of the designer. The life expectancy of a rehabbed Eno may be longer than that of a new structure. Eno is built of brick, brass, slate, Italian marble, and hand-carved wood. It is nearly 83 years old, older than most of us in this room. Rehabbing Eno is energy conserving. The greenest building is the one that's already built. On the other hand, building a one-story building that caters to the automobile fits the definition of sprawl. Building a new center will duplicate scarce civic resources. The 22,000 square foot is ostensibly needed so we can have another library room, another coffee shop, another healthcare facility. Do we really have tax dollars to do that? Eno is a cost competitive alternative to new construction. A very high percentage of needs are already being met in this facility. We don't know how many seniors will actively show up 5 or 10 years from now, but we do know that only a few activities at this time need more capacity. On the other hand, if you move out of Eno Hall, how will you use it to this extent in the future? Will it sit empty all day? Isn't that the real waste? And lastly, several people have remarked that they don't want to ruin Eno by making all the changes necessary. You won't. You won't ruin Eno by using Eno. You can only ruin it by inappropriately design, not by its use. At a public hearing on this particular subject over the course of 4 years, Simsbury Main Street Partnership has advocated for the enlightened renovation of Eno for the needs of the seniors. We have not been alone in this, and as we have noticed that the majority of seniors who show up at these hearings are in favor of staying at Eno. The first choice of seniors all over town is overwhelming: lower taxes. Please be physically responsible, thrifty, and using the resources we have. This was unanimously approved by the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll head back this way now. Okay.
My name is Vic Bible, 15 Alder Road, Simsbury, Connecticut. I'm also a member of the Aging and Disability Commission. One of the things in the town literature that I looked at today, and I have been at several of the town meetings, you can't hear me? Now you can?
Speak right into the, yeah, speak right in.
I'll eat the microphone. Is that better?
That's good.
I'll have it for dinner. Okay. One of the things that I want to make sure that people are aware of is, as we have been made aware of at the Aging and Disability Commission, is this building is not handicap accessible. It does not meet the American Disabilities Act requirements. When we were discussing some of the renovations we wanted to make in this building, one of the hindrances or challenges, as this document says, is historic building, potential unforeseen construction costs, if indeed the National Historic Registry will allow you to make that change. There are changes to be made in the men's room and ladies' room that we could not make. We have a kitchen that does not fit the needs. It is an emotional issue for everyone. The 169 people that attend on a regular basis, they get here. But if we had another facility, such as a separate facility where you will make it ADA compliant and available, parking here is a very emotional issue because you got 40 spots. I came extra early so I could make sure I didn't have to walk up the hill to get here. So it's something that we have to, this is a beautiful building, but we're not free to do with it what we want. And I think that point has to be made for whoever proceeds with the building plans. It's a historic building. You can't change the color of the walls. You can't do things in the kitchen. We need to meet the needs. The 169 people who come here, their needs are met. But how many more people would come if we had a facility in which we could get to and also be ADA compliant? That's an important piece, I think, for this town to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bible. Is there anyone else who... Pardon? Could you go to the... Could you go and speak into the microphone so that they can hear you on SCTV and give your name, please? Thank you. Sure. It'll help everyone hear you.
We live in Weetog. Okay? We live in Weetog. What I'm about quite good number of years, more than a. So what I'm trying to know is this: whatever change if people are suggesting that shifting from this place and all that, you have your points, and others also have their points. People who live here. Is there a tax increase? Did I hear there will be increase in the tax? The first gentleman,
the slide on the taxes,
architect.
yes, it would increase taxes. Both options will increase taxes for both about $10 if your house is worth $300,000. We could. Can you put that slide back up?
Is there an increase in the tax when you were talking?
Here it is, right there.
Technically, we don't know if it's an increase in taxes.
What?
Technically, we don't know if it's an increase in taxes.
We don't know. There are many factors that impact taxes. But if everything stayed the same and we just did this project, that's what the cost would be.
Okay. Second thing I wanted to say, when you are wanting to shift to another place and going and parking, it looks like a beautiful garden and all that. The big facilities where we see in other places. This is a senior center. People want access quickly, not by parking somewhere. From there, how will they walk here? How will they come? I won't be able to come. I am 76. And problem of skidding, everything is there, So those considerations, I'm just scared. Old age, any change, any movement is scary. All old people want to go to the same bed, stay to the same room. I'm going by that. From that angle I'm talking about. Children move out, grandparents, other people move out. But the old people stay in the same house. They want to go to the same center, same shopping place, say hi to the same people. So this is the way the old people got settled here. I have never seen big crowd here in 5-6 years, unless you rent it out to somebody. Then I don't know. So this is my point, nothing else. People are in the town, and we also go for many sort of layout, this, that, A lot of people are here who are technically, engineers and town planner and other people. But this is a facility for the old people. If you can improve on it, most welcome, But not pushing it farther away. It will be a bit scary for me. I don't know, for other people.
Could you just state your name so we can write that down? What is your name? What is your name? Manju. Yeah, she'll get it. Oh, no, that's okay. Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to speak who hasn't spoken? Yes, Edna.
She's blessing herself before she speaks.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Edna Schreindoffer, and I'm older than this building, I'll have you know. But anyway, I've been coming here since day 2. Okay? I've been coming here since day 2, every day. So I have seen a lot of changes. Now, you're all talking about the cost. Nobody is talking about the safety of this building. It is not safe. We have too many stairs. In fact, last week, we had an incident where a woman fell going up the ramp. She tripped on the mat. and hit her head. She had to go to the hospital, but thank God she was okay. So we need a new senior center. This is a beautiful building, but we need a new one, all on one floor. And here, now when we have cheese day, you can't have exercise. They have different programs that we can't do this, we can't do that, and that should not be. So that's all I have to say is that we need a new senior center. Yes, Patty? Since 89, 90, yeah. Because I worked till I was 70. That was in 91, and I started coming here. And I come every day. I do a lot of the programs.
You do. Thank you, Edna.
So, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So hopefully we'll get a new senior center.
Thank you, Edna. I think we know where you stand. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Oh, what's your name?
Okay. Mrs. Burke?
She needs your name.
Or is that? Okay. We'll go with Mrs. Burke.
I'm Lucille Burke, 247 West Mountain Road in West Simsbury. Like Edna, I make frequent use of the building here. I've made wonderful friends, and I can't thank Kathy enough for running such an efficient, well-maintained program for us. She is one of the reasons we're so successful when I hear other people coming from other centers talking about what a great job she does. My information has been coming from the newspaper, so I'm maybe redundant on what I'm going to ask. You're talking about needs and wants. Who determines needs and wants? Is it a committee? Is it the board of selectmen? Is it a group of seniors? I don't understand that part.
I think in the short term, we worked with senior center staff, but I think over many, many years that the project has been under development, I think there's been a lot of public input on. Maybe you can just...
Because what my friends and I've never been asked what do we see that we need versus what we want. And I haven't seen a survey. I might have missed it. Okay, second question. Thank you. I've seen cars crash into each other in the parking lot. The gentleman who was talking about the safety of the parking lot is real. I've seen people parking there. You keep saying 40 spaces. Well, I would make it 35, because when I pull in several times a week, invariably our parking spaces are taken up by the people who are using these commercial buildings over here on this street. And I saw someone who I knew park, get out, and go into the bank building up here. So we are not really 40 spaces. And I really feel sorry when we have a larger program that our seniors have to walk up that hill with a walker or a cane, or even just being frail. And the accidents we've had, we're all vulnerable to that. So I am concerned about the parking. And I do have one question, because I haven't heard it addressed. The parking garage is going to be 2 tiers, 2 levels? How is the access to the top level? Is it by stairs? Is it by elevator? Like, how do I get up to the second level other than walking upstairs? He said their intention is to have an elevator to serve the top tier and the back of it? Is that what you meant? Okay. And how are the elevators going to be, I don't mean to be scary, but how are the elevators going to be safe and maintained? Women at night, and there are a lot of women here at night, in the evening, and hopefully sometimes we don't always meet during the day. We do have night events. How are they going to be maintained, or how are they going to be safe? Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. R. Carey. The elevator is actually in and within the structure of the building itself, and there would be a secure vestibule at each level of the garage. So if you're in the lower level of the garage, which would be undercover and lit and bright, you could walk directly into the lower level of the center, and that would be a secured door. And once you're in it, there would be closed-circuit television monitoring you. You could get into the elevator and go to both levels. At the upper level of the deck, would be an open space, so it would be open to the sky. You drive your car up onto the upper level. You would, walk on the sidewalk to the entry, which would go into the second level of the center, where it would be very similar to the lower level. There would be a secure vestibule. The elevator would also access that space. So from there, you could go into the second level of the center, or take the elevator down to the lower level of the center, or go down and then go to the lower level of the deck. So that secure vestibule and entry elevator lobby would access both levels of the deck as well as both levels of the center.
Thank you. Ms. Burke, we can come back to you. Let's finish getting everyone up. You're good? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Yes.
Hi, I'm Pat Carpin, 24 Worcester Road, Terriffill, Connecticut. I'd just like to know why we are not moving forward after all these years. We seem to be just going back over and over the same things. If a new senior center costs less than fixing this building, why aren't we going forward with a new senior center? Putting a parking garage behind this beautiful building is not what it takes. We have seniors. I've had my business for 39 years in this town. And the seniors are down in the north end in their complex. And I'm glad they're down there because they come to my shop. I service them. Why hasn't anybody looked into any property down that way for a senior center? It doesn't have to be in the center of town. It can be way up this end, it can be down that end, but they need a new senior center. And the elevators here, if there's a fire and someone's on the 3rd floor, that's it. You shut the elevator off, there's no way for a handicapped person to get out. And so it's unsafe. So we need to move forward.
Thank you. Yes, Bud.
I'm Bud Kelly, 1 West Street, Simsbury, Connecticut. I happen to be a longtime member of the Public Building Committee, and I also happen to be a member of the group that was set up to take care of this issue last year. I'm going to take a little different approach, if I may, okay? In 1969, my wife, my 3 sons, and I came to Simsbury, Connecticut. My wife and I both grew up in Connecticut, and so when we came here, we looked at Simsbury. You look at the beautiful drive down the mountain when you're coming in from Hartford, and all the wonderful things that are here, the river and everything that goes with it. And back in 1969, this area was a lot different than it is today. But I think it's still just as magnificent. Now, the things that interested me here tonight are this. When we came to town, Oracle Farms was for sale. Now, does everybody know who Oracle Farms is? That's where Simsbury Farms, golf course, recreation, the whole 9 yards exists today. Originally, property was going to be bought by developers, and there were going to be over 250 houses placed on that golf course. Look at what that golf course has done for us. I would almost volunteer that half of the people in here probably played golf or something over there over the years. And they made the right decision. It was a tough one, but they made the right decision to keep it, and it's turned out to be one of the biggest assets we have. Later on, we needed a new school. So Squadron Line was built. Again, we built a superb school that handled all of our needs in the area. And every school we have in town I'm saying perfect. I think that the school system we have is superior to none. And what we need to do is think, all right, let me go back a minute. And along in that development, we've had the library built. The library today is one of the finest libraries in the state. Everything we've done here has worked out beautifully. Everything that we've done here has caused trouble. I mean, when I say trouble, anxious thinking. I would have hated to have been trying to make a decision to buy the golf course. Now, as I say, I have been part of this thing right from the start, and I will say I don't think that this is the building where it should be. That's my personal opinion. However, we need to find a place that we can build a center, whether it's here, whether it's someplace else. And unfortunately, you sitting here are the people who are going to have to take this on. So just remember that everything has worked in this town right from the start. And so you've got to apply yourself to this thing now, and you've got to make it work, and you've got to make it work for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Is there anyone else who would like to speak who hasn't spoken yet? Yes.
Mary Beth Schreindoffer, 9 Westwood Drive, Simsbury. So I'm a teacher at Lime High School, and I am a believer of if you build it, they will come. And I know there was mention of maybe only servicing 160, 170 senior citizens. And I'm putting the thought out there that maybe the reason why they haven't been able to service more seniors is because of the facility, that there's not enough facility here to offer enough for the men in the town. I hear we don't have a billiards room or a games room, and that a lot of programs are being shifted or being dropped depending on what activity is being run that particular day, versus a senior being able to come down here every single day and know that a specific program will be there for them when they arrive, and not find out when they do arrive that their program has been canceled because another activity has taken its place. So I throw that out and have you wonder about why maybe you aren't pulling in more seniors. And it could be because of the facility. I, as I mentioned, teach at Old Lyme High School, and we just did a whole new reconstruction on our high school. And if the townspeople could, they would have built a brand new building. It has cost them a lot more money trying to create something out of something that was old. And they have not been able to iron out a lot of the issues in the old building, no matter how much money they've thrown into it. And every construction person I spoke with said they should have built a new building. They would have saved themselves a lot of money. So 2 thoughts there that I thought would be important to throw out to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has not yet spoken who wants to speak? Ed?
Ed Lamontagne, 4 George Street. Let me just say, currently, I'm not in favor of spending $800,000 for a parking lot that can potentially bring in tax revenues that is currently used by other organizations such as Performing Arts Center and, as we heard from Simsbury Women's Club. Also, back in June of 2014, Mr. Arcari spent a lot of time and I imagine considerable amount of money to provide us with a handicap accessibility review of Eno Memorial Hall and the Senior Center. And it's a fair-sized document that indicates that this building is not accessible. And let me just say, from an aging and disability perspective, regardless of what happens with the Senior Center, this building needs to be made accessible, not only for persons with disabilities, but also for seniors. We also, back in August of 14, there was a recommendation to look at 36 Drake Hill. And for some reason, which I am not aware of, that has not come up in our conversation as a site. But it was a recommended site. Granted, there's possibility of wetlands issues, but Mr. Shea indicated that they certainly are not insurmountable. So what I am going to recommend to the board is that, and I know we've had a lot of study committees, I've been on a lot of study committees, but I'm going to recommend another study committee. And the study committee should be of concerned citizens with input from town employees and from various boards. But the charge from the Board of Selectmen should be this. Number one, the study committee should be given a specific dollar amount that they would have to work with for the design of a new senior center. And let me say that, we are not looking for Taj Mahal. We're looking for a functional building. And based upon the information that Mickey and Kathy has provided, what would that include? It doesn't have to be an 18,000 square foot building. Perhaps it could be a 14,000 or 12,000 square foot building. I'm also in favor of distributive model, meaning that once this building is made accessible, we could still use some of this building for senior center programs. What that would also do is distribute the parking so that we all know that there's some insufficient parking here, but if you distribute the programs, you're also going to distribute the parking resources. The last thing, right now, and just again to respond to somebody mentioned about, the seniors not using the building, but over the past 5 years, there has been at a minimum of 6 municipalities that have either built new senior centers or renovated existing buildings. So what do they know that we don't know? I mean, I'm sure they have a number of seniors in their communities, but they have gone out of, they have developed study committees to look at that, and it came down to them determining that they needed to meet the needs of the seniors in their communities. In addition, the one thing to remember that right now, the interest rates for bonding are very low. So this gives us an opportune time that for us to do anything, now's the time to do it. So I thank you for your attention. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lamontagne. I'll keep going this way. Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, we'll return. If there's no one new who wants to speak, we did have some people who wanted extra time. I think the first person who asked for extra time was Mr. Kalishman.
And I think what you really have to do is you got to decide whether you're going to fish or cut bait. And what you have to do is turn it over to the public, schedule a vote, let the people come out and decide if they want it, where they want it, and what they want to spend. And if these people are going to pay the bill, because what I'm hearing now, and I'm looking at the board, in particular Mr. Ashcombe, and we just passed them they just passed an amendment to the budget where, because of the golf course cost, and last year they said they came in with a revenue, they were going to make $80,000 in revenue at the golf course. They never produced it. So he come up where he was short $80,000, $200,000. So he said, now rather than get into a situation where when we get these losses, we have to cover it up in a budget, what we're going to do is we're going to start putting money aside so we can pay for it. So now you people don't realize it, but your tax dollar that goes into the town, a certain portion of that is put aside to pay for the golf course. Now, I heard somebody say, well, the golf course was the best thing that ever hit town. Do you know what you're paying for that golf course? You have no idea what you're paying for.
It's still worth it.
Well, see,
Please, direct.
one man's opinion.
Well, yeah, thank you.
One man's opinion. And that's the problem with a lot of these studies. You put on people that are from the town that have their own ox to grind, and that's the agenda they push. They don't care about these people. They don't care about somebody that's on Social Security. What do they care? Let somebody else pick up the cost. But getting back to the important thing, why don't you get the bull by the horn and say, let the people vote on it. Let the person that's going to pay for it, let them decide what they want. And as far as the parking question goes, let me remind this Board of Selectmen and the voters, if I may. About 3 years ago, when the developer bought the property, all this property around this building was for sale, and when he bought that property, he bought it, and then he came to the town and he says, I have the properties, but I need parking. So the town, in their benevolency, what they did is said, fine, we'll give you the parking here. So when you come in the afternoon looking for a parking space, they're in the restaurant. And you know, I'm not going to start, he said, she said, but Mr. Sawicki and the administration recommended that we give him the free parking. So he has free parking whenever he wants to use it. And it's our parking. And you say, well, you can't find spacing? That's one of the reasons. And now to get back the safety question. This one, you know, now we're getting into the things where everybody's now they're afraid that this building is going to be chosen, so now they're going in with the safety issues and saying this is dangerous, that's dangerous. It's not. People fall my wife fell a year ago. I don't blame the landlord. She fell and she fell. And the same thing here. And the thing that has to be changed, but you're not going to change it, you talk about people crossing the street. We have a highway running through the center of town, and people are driving 40, 45, 50 miles an hour coming through a town. And you wonder if they hit anybody, they're going to kill them. And the reason I know it, I live over there, and when I walk Hot Meadow Street, I feel sorry for the animals because I see all these dead animals. That tells me one thing. If you can't stop for a squirrel or a raccoon, you're going too fast. But what happens? Nobody says anything, and you know why nobody says anything? Because nobody wants to hurt these businesses down here, the Main Street Corporation. And if a parking lot is so important, it's important, why is it that the Main Street Corporation, they're recommending to the Economic Development Commission that they build a parking garage?
Thank you, Mr. Cashman. If you still have comments after everyone else, we can come back to you.
There's a lot more.
We can come back to you.
The only thing I like to close with, and this is the end, you won't hear from me again, is in talking about the elderly. There's a poem written by Robert Lawrence Bunyan, and it's called The Fallen. And it's for all the elderly people, and most of you here will remember it. And I'm not going to read the whole poem. The only portion I'm going to read is this. because it's germane.
Mr. Cashman, we'll let you
They
read the
shall
poem.
grow-
Mr. Cashman, why don't you do
They shall
the
grow not
poem
old
after?
as we that are left grow old. Age shall and weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember him. And that's for the
Thank you, Mr.
fellows that made it
Cashman. Is
possible
there any?
for you
Thank you,
fellows
Mr.
to shoot your
Cashman.
mouth off tonight.
Is that? I think Mr. Orenstein had a request for more time.
I'm getting ready to run for Selectmen.
Thank you. Guys, but this is a hearing for the Board of Selectmen. If folks can please address their comments to the board, that would be great. Mr. Orenstein, thank you.
I got about another 4 paragraphs. So let me continue where I left off. Okay, we talked about going in. Going in, there's a little bit of time. End of a lunch or end of an activity, there's a mass exodus. At the end of an event with the seniors backing out and others still walking to their cars, is there a safety issue? I think there is. Lacking a one-way continuous forward flow, the layout will significantly increase the risk of fender benders and, God forbid, vehicle pedestrian accidents. I just can't see it. I can't see a blank wall at one end. You got to come up with some other alternative to it. At the 529 meeting last year, Mr. Sawitsky, when talking about a reduced Eno proposal, stated the assumption that the space behind Eno would be evacuated and a retaining wall would be put in along Railroad Street to just about double the existing 37 spaces. Is that gone at this point, or is that still under consideration?
I would say it's still under consideration, but enough study has not been done.
Okay, so again, we're talking about parking studies. If this can be done, especially with one-way flows and diagonal spaces, then to me, this is a no-brainer as compared to a parking platform. Who'd want to spend an additional $45,000 to $48,000 per incremental space for an additional 25 spaces that a parking platform would yield? Perhaps consideration should even be given to narrowing the width of Railroad Street and making it one-way, if that would provide more parking spaces with safer access. To you. I understand that the Board of Selectmen has to balance the needs of the seniors of the town with other town needs. If the Board of Selectmen decides upon another renovation expansion of Eno, even if it is phased, then I believe it should be conditional upon the in-advance certification by a parking facility design company of adequate, safe parking for seniors. I don't think the senior part of it has really been a focus of the garage at this point. Maybe it has. It is clear to me that the parking platform drawings that I have seen do not meet my definition, at least, of adequate safe parking. Furthermore, I doubt there is adequate space behind Eno to provide adequate safe parking for seniors. Can I return one more time?
You actually still have 2.5 minutes, so you're good.
Does anybody else want to come back and comment first? Okay. Let me come back one more time on a different topic.
Absolutely. Okay, Mr. Zaylor, did you want to continue your remarks?
You need my name again? Be glad to. Zaylor. There's one key piece of information that has not come forth to you people today, and that is that there is another site. You're getting some numbers for this particular site and the property that's currently owned by the state of Connecticut, okay? But the subcommittee that was formed identified a site on Bushy Hill Road in Stratton Brook on the Ethel Walker property that can be built, that at the time, okay, the cost estimates showed it could be built cheaper by $1,299,500 than Eno, refurbishing Eno. And the architect came up with a representation of what that building would look like. Nice, clean design. No fuss, no muss, one floor, no elevators for the parking garage. There isn't a parking garage. You've got room for expansion if you need it. Here's your parking, plenty of room to expand if you need it. Ability to expand the building if you need it. So this was available to the Board of Selectmen since 2013. They knew about this, and they knew about Eno. They knew that this was cheaper than Eno, yet they still persist with Eno. I don't understand it. Now, you know why this was not presented to you? You won't believe this. Mary Glassman, May 28th, I think, decided that she didn't want this to go forward because of the, I gotta believe this, the downtown sidewalks. Not that she was afraid we're going to take the sidewalks up the Bushy Hill, okay, but what she said was that the town Main Street Partnership or whatever invested a lot of money in sidewalks in downtown area to make it, walkable or friendly or something. And apparently there aren't enough people walking around, so she wants to import senior citizens to the downtown area so we can sort of I don't know, walk. So you could park your car here, or there's a DOT site, which I'll talk about in a minute, near, well, anyway. Can you imagine you park your car, let's say here, you use these beautiful sidewalks, you go to Fitzgerald's, get your groceries, haul them back here, and get back in your car. And today would have been a beautiful day to do that. The sun was shining, you know, and Friday was an even better day. A little wind would help you there. Really, though, all seriousness, I think this is a disservice to the town because that property can be developed at less expense than Eno, and it's cleaner. Now, the criteria we had in collecting sites was, one, we had to put it on town-owned property. We own plenty of town property. And, you know, we have a $9 million investment in that property at the Walkers' ideal site to put this particular building. And also the instruction was not to buy any existing commercial property because, number one, you've got to buy it, okay? You've got to pay upfront money. And number two, you're taking it off the tax roll. And that taking it off the tax roll lasts forever. Made a lot of sense then, makes a lot of sense now. So that's where we ended up on Bushy Hill. The site that is being proposed here, that is owned by the state of Connecticut, we looked at that. We knew that it violated the grounds that were prescribed for us, but we thought, well, at least let people know that we looked at everything that's available around here. So you're getting the land free at Bushy Hill. You're paying $800,000 to buy the land from the state of Connecticut. And then besides the $800,000, you're going to be losing a tax every year, the property tax.
Thank you,
now, I spoke to
Mr. Zaylor, if you could just wrap
just
up.
One more minute.
Well, we have someone else who wants to speak
can I
too,
come
so
back?
we'll come back, absolutely. So we'll go back to Mr. Orenstein unless there's somebody else.
Are you sure you're giving me enough time?
Absolutely.
No,
I gave you more than...
I'm using technology.
Okay, so we have people who want
guys
to
are
talk,
cruel.
who've spoken before. If you don't mind, Mark, two people, we'll start with them, then come back for thirds. Okay, David. No, please direct. comments to the board. Thank you. Thank you.
The public should have the right to make a decision whether they want to do this, how much they want to spend, if they want to spend it or not. And then move forward, if they say yes, if they don't,
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. John, you had your hand up. Can you just, because SCTV won't be able to hear your comments.
John Schaefer. Just wanted to ask, will this, the slides from the presentation tonight be on the website?
They are already on the website. If you go to the public building, if you go to departments, public building, senior center.
They weren't today. It's
Jeff?
similar, but it's different.
Oh, then this will be up.
There's a link from the homepage, too.
Tomorrow.
They will be later. Okay. All right.
This was on there today.
I have made them. Okay, so
I think
let's go with Mark, and then we'll get to if town staff wants to comments. And I have to go back to
First of all, let me agree with that. I am not that much, while I am in favor of a new site, of a new building, I am not that much enamored by DOT also. I think on the other hand, Performing Arts Center may be very usable. So anyways, with that, with the Stevie Wonder tribute in the background last night, I started to surf. And it dawned on me, let me get on to Google Earth. So I got onto Google Earth and started walking down Hop Meadow Street from a view. And I saw some wooded areas along the way. So I'm going to stir the pot a little bit. Let me make a few suggestions. I don't know if they're really feasible or not, but let me make them anyways. One is, the one that I became enamored of, is I took a look at Central School. And then I went to the GIS, new GIS system, which is great. And on the other side of the ball field is probably 2 to 3 acres of forest that it turns out the town owns. That is flat. It's on Massaco Street. It's about 2/10 of a mile out of the center of town. Senior Center, Central School combined, hey, just should take a look at it. I'm not qualified enough to know whether it's buildable or not buildable, but it looked like there was a reasonable amount of space there to put in a reasonable senior center and parking. Then I backed up a little bit, and I said, gee, there's a bunch of baseball fields here, ballpark, and there's some nice parking right there also. Maybe one of the ball fields should be sacrificed. Try getting that by the Little League.
You can make that presentation.
Yeah, go
Or maybe one of the fields could be moved to Massaco where that free space is and used. I have no idea what any kinds of restrictions are in Memorial Park in terms of putting in buildings. But it looked like there may be another place in Memorial Park, right at the entrance, right very close to the entrance between the Little League fields and the other fields that may be buildable, too. Another place that showed up, and again, I don't know if it's buildable or not, was the backside of Schultz Park going up. The front is a great park, but it looked like there maybe is a couple of acres with maybe a 10-foot rise, 10, 15-foot rise in the back that maybe would be feasible also. I mean, I'm stirring the pot.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Zaylor, did you want to continue?
The soccer field at the end.
He's getting a workout in. Yeah, okay. Couldn't remember.
Thanks for that.
Just to step back for a moment, as I said, the DOT site that's being offered here has an $800,000 entrance fee that you don't have up at Bushy Hill. And then the loss in revenue, I spoke to Hiram Peck from our town planning, and he told me that there are 2 sites there, 2 pieces of property, totaling 2.8 acres. The site that would, on which we had used for the senior center, is 1.1 acre, or about 40% of the property. He estimated that the total 2.8 acres would, and he consulted, and did some evaluation of his own, would be $1,092,000. We take 40% of that, the tax revenue would have been $436,800 per year forever. And that's just the land. That property is zoned for commercial. So you have to add a building to that. So, and then in fairness, this is a generic, this is pretty generic. This would fit, you could make this fit or whatever equivalent on that particular site. But I really fault the Board of Selectmen, because this trade-off should be made available to the townspeople. You could, the comparison of building up at Bushy Hill for, what I said, the land comes free and there's no loss of tax revenue, versus building on the DOT site, paying the $800,000 extra fee and the loss of tax revenue. So then the decision would be, do you want to have your people go out there or come down here and pay the price, okay? If you want to come down here and pay the price, okay. But at least people know that there is another alternative that can be handled at less cost, but, with a penalty of not being in your town. You're not going to find the perfect solution. Each one has its pluses, each one has its minuses, and that's what those pluses and minuses are. This is a no-brainer. You cannot get the parking. So you can build as much as you want. If you want to expand it at some point in time, I don't know, you've got an investment in here. Do you ever hear the term kludge? That's what this is going to be when you look at the designs that, well, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zahler. Is there anyone else, members of the public?
No, wait. This is it. I want a message to the seniors that may be watching on television, okay? I'm afraid that this Board of Selectmen is really intent on using Eno, okay? I don't know why. They're spending a lot of time, a lot of money over the years, and you can see they're doing it right now as we speak. So if you want to solve your parking problem, you better show up at the town Board of Selectmen meeting and venture your opinion, okay? You got to beat them up and let them know that you want a place, okay, that works from a parking standpoint.
Thank you. But you're right, Mr. Zahler, and we do welcome, for those who couldn't make the meeting today, we certainly welcome your comments, absolutely, and that's a great point. Is there any other member of the public? Yes, Pat.
The seniors have helped pay for soccer fields, ball fields, golf course, everything else. Now it's time for the younger people to stand up and help their elderly of this town.
Thank you, Pat. Is there any other member, Mr. Kalishman? No, everyone's entitled to speak. We have no limits. We're going to go as long until everyone knows. We're just limiting, Mr. Kalishman, I am limiting speeches to 5 minutes at a time, and we'll come back after.
I beg your indulgence. I'm addressing this to the board, and I'm addressing this to this courteous audience that we have here. Individuals, I should say. I beg of you, and I plead with the audience, before we go one more step, let's take the vote to the people and let's decide if they want it or they don't want it. Let's not do what we're doing, where what we do, the good old boys, they run in and they've been taken care of for the last 50 years. It's time for the good old boys to stand on their own 2 feet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kalishman. Any other member of the public that wants to speak at this point? Mr. Peck asked to be recognized. Mr. Peck is the Director of Planning for the town of Simsbury.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this evening. I greatly appreciate it. Just want to address a couple of issues. One had to do with the financial impact of the plan to develop the Senior Community Center at the DOT parking lot, and the other had to do with the potential conflict with the zoning regulations. So those are just two quick issues I want to address very quickly. I have a pretty long paper, actually, with some comments, and I'll tell you about that in a second, but I'm not necessarily going to read through that, but I have copies for the board. I was asked to take a quick analysis of the existing plan that was adopted by the Zoning Commission for the town center. And what that plan shows is that the total amount of building that could be built on that lot, that portion of the lot, is somewhere between 223,000 and almost 300,000 square feet. That's a significant amount of building. There's no question about that. What that means is that, and the reason for the difference is that that's one of the few areas in town that would allow a 4-story building to be built in the town center. Most of the buildings are 2.5 stories or 3 stories, but in that particular area it's lower, so a higher building could be built down there. One of the other things that I took a look at was a parking deck, which is part of the plan that was approved by the Zoning Commission as town center plan. That particular deck is almost 96,000 square feet in total. That's 2 levels. What that means is that there would be a significant contribution to the local taxes, obviously, if that was done as private development. I did an initial, and I'm not the assessor, I want to be really clear about that. Thank goodness, actually. It's one of the jobs that I would rather not have. But one of the jobs that the assessor does is assess that amount of building and determine what the taxes would be for it. My preliminary estimates came up with something on the order of about $1 million a year that we'd be foregoing on taxes from that property. In addition to that, as I mentioned to you, there's a parking deck that was proposed, a 2-level parking deck. I had some estimates actually from very serious, not the Walker Group, but some other people in nearby area that estimate that the cost to build such a deck would be about $5 million. I'm sorry. That's much larger than the deck that was previously discussed for behind Eno. Any structure, no matter where it's built, has to be fully ADA compliant, including parking, and a benefit to the entire community. What the assessor did this afternoon was go over my numbers, and I think came up with some numbers that were slightly less. I used a mill rate for the entire town plus the fire district. He used a mill rate just for the town, and I think his numbers are somewhere around $800,000 in terms of lost tax revenue. I want to correct one thing, and not to pick on Mr. Zaylor, but he mentioned the $800,000 price of entry for the DOT lots. Let me just say this, and the Board of Selectmen certainly hasn't decided anything about this. It's certainly possible that if the town decided to use those lots for a public purpose, it could go back to the legislature and get that land for much cheaper, perhaps $1. So the $800,000 is not necessarily the idea of the tail that should wag the dog here. It's certainly possible that the Board of Selectmen could, should they decide to go back and do that. With regard to the current town center code, I did get some comments from Lee Einsweiler from Code Studio, who did the original town center code. And Lee actually, I asked him a little bit about the plan that was proposed for the single level plan that was shown to you this evening in terms of whether that would comply with the plan that we had put together for the town center. And Lee actually went on for 3 or 4 pages, and I'm not going to read that to you, but I'm simply going to say to you that this is one of the most significant aspects of the town center plan that the board will be deciding in the next few years. There are other major projects, both north and south, but this particular project in the town center will have a significant impact on whether that code is going to be simply looked at as something we can change whenever we feel like it, or whether it was taken seriously when the charrette was done back in 2009 and the code was adopted in 2011. It is important to say, and be very clear about this, that a senior center could be accommodated in a multi-story building down at the DOT lots if that building were brought into compliance with the code. The plan that we looked at this evening is not in compliance with the code. It could be adjusted, parking could be adjusted, the building location could be adjusted to make it comply with the code. But the current concept that we looked at was not in compliance with the current town center code. I'd be happy to discuss this with anybody at any time. Some of you have called. Mr. Zeller has called from time to time. Happy to discuss with you at any time, and I'm welcome to leave my comments with you for your consideration at some future date. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any, we've heard from staff. Rich, you've worked on this for 4 years, and Jeff, do you have any comments to address any of the questions raised?
A quick comment on the site plan that was developed for the DOT site. The sole purpose of that exercise when we did that plan was, number one, not to spend too much money on engineering design, and number two, just to see worst case scenario with the program that we've developed, a 22,000 square foot building with 100 parking spaces, if in fact it would work on that site. We were aware that the center zone had other various requirements and restrictions. However, it does allow for civic use, and we think, it's possible, as Hiram said, that it could be worked into a larger development if, in fact, there was a market or a demand for that space on a commercial side. So just wanted to say that to kind of put it in perspective.
Thank you. Rich, do you have anything you want to add?
Good evening. I'll be brief. That's not my normal modus operandi, but in respect to all of you being here, I just wanted to say a couple things, though, that really the effort that went into this study came from a lot of senior citizens in the community and the Public Building Committee. Public Building Committee was the lead agency after this project was assigned to them by the Board of Selectmen, and the Senior Community Center Study Group did a lot of effort that I know all of you that are here are probably aware of it, but folks out in television land should be aware that these folks visited a number of centers around the state and vetted the program and the space needs that our architect came up with for Simsbury. I also wanted to say that we, in fact, have not spent any design money. What's happened in this program is that we went beyond what the original charge was, which was to do a needs assessment, which was identify through interviewing users, observing users, talking to staff to find out what programs are needed in the future based on the population growth figures that we have from the census and what we see happening in the town, and identify a space that's needed. And what's happened is that the committee has endorsed some of those needs and spaces and have developed 3 or 4 alternatives on 1 or 2 sites. So I think the really important thing to know, and we've heard folks mention that they'd like to vote. Well, at this point, we really need a site and we need a budget, because in my experience with architects, at this point in the program, the first thing they say is, well, what's your budget? And I think with a range of prices and a range of options that have been developed in terms of programs and square footage, we can do a pretty good job over a pretty reasonable price range. And I wish you luck. When I started this process with the committee, I was not a senior. I am now. Thank you.
Better than the alternative.
I may be with
That's pretty much it.
Mr. Arcari, do you have anything you want to add based on the comments you've heard at this point?
I guess I just have to add that a significant amount of time has gone into the study of the need for the senior patrons in the community, and I would, recommend decision be based on need, not necessarily on budget first. Come up with a solution, whether it's renovation of Hall or construction of a new building. Obviously, I think both approaches can work, but I think you should focus on resolving the program needs for the seniors first.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? And then I'll turn it over to the board to see if they have questions or concerns. Any other comments from the public at this point? Okay. I'll start by asking the Board of Selectmen if they have any comments or questions for staff or...
I have a question for Mr. Arcari, if you don't mind.
Cheryl?
Thank you. Could we go back to the slide where you had the plan? I'm a little confused about the use of the SCTV space and how you accounted for that in both the plan and the pricing structure.
The existing SCTV space is located in the lower level, and it's in the what would be the east side of the lower level. Right now, this is a rotunda on the lower level. You go through the double doors. There's a mystery wall right here. There's a double set of doors down there, and nobody knows what's behind it. That's SCTV. Yep. And that's in this area. And then under the stage, there's actually a multi-level configuration where there's bathrooms sunken quite deep. It's
Now, are you
misused.
including that in your...
So the plan is to remove SCTV from their current space. Their current space is not ideal for SCTV. The plan is to expand into that space with the multi-purpose room so we can seat about 150 people, and then create doors directly into the front lobby. So when you come in the building, the front pre-function lobby space communicates directly with the multi-purpose space, and the multi-purpose space can be divided into 3 different size spaces for different functions. The space under the stage would actually be renovated for the kitchen. So we would take out the bathrooms, we'd take out the split level, make it all one level. It should be noted that this entire lower level would be flush to grade from this main entrance turnaround, so cars could drop you off. You'd have full wheelchair handicap accessibility, zero threshold into the building and into this entire level. The SCTV space would be located to the lower level beneath the administration area, and they would have direct access to the lower level of the proposed garage. The idea, they would have direct access via elevator. And the reason being is that in our discussions with SCTV, they really need a black box studio space. Right now, their space is poor. It needs to be ideal for studio production. So being in that location puts them in a good spot.
So you're still anticipating SCTV being in this building?
They would still be in this building. Now, other schemes have considered relocation of SCTV to other sites. It's just been talk, and that is a political football. So I'll stay away from that. Other than
We didn't know that.
yeah. Ultimately, though, there is an opportunity to provide an improved space for SCTV here in this scheme, if you went forward with this scheme, or the 3 iterations of this scheme.
And how many square feet is that?
In this particular scheme, we're adding, I don't have the numbers in front of me, approximately 9,000 square feet to the building. It's 8 and change. And the addition accommodates the dedicated absolute needs that the program really needs to have. It needs to have exercise fitness space, really needs new administrative space adjacent to the entrance, needs handicap accessible access from the street, needs circulation and socialization space, needs expansion of the multi-purpose space and a new commercial kitchen. And the additions and this expansion allow for other spaces in the building to be expanded. For instance, the current library, which is above the this lecture hall. What do we call that lecture hall, Rich? Yeah, the old courtroom, I'm sorry. Above the old courtroom is where administration is now. Well, we can now move administration. You get a much bigger library space, which can accommodate games and programs. So the addition on the north side opens up opportunities within the building.
And the current kitchen space would no longer exist in its current form? You're going to make a whole new kitchen space? Is that what that space is under the stage?
That's correct. Actually, the current kitchen space is under the DAR's space. So it's from about here up, and the arts and crafts space is here. So by building a new kitchen directly adjacent to the multifunction room, which is sort of a problem functionally now that it's remote, it puts it close to loading and access. It also allows arts and crafts to expand under the entire DAR space. We can take the old prep space and turn that into storage for arts and crafts. Arts and crafts becomes a much more functional program to meet the long-term needs of that space. Actually works very well. The thing I like the most about the scheme is that on the south side of the building, the multifunction room will be opened up to the exterior. We'll be able to create an exterior patio there for dining, outdoor recreation, directly next to the historic 36-inch tree.
Is the main entranceway covered there for the drop-off?
This main entrance will have a covered entrance, yes.
Yes.
These windows here, at one point there was a design where the windows were sort of looking out. They weren't exposed to the outside of the yard. What would be the situation?
In this proposed scheme, there is a second level. This lobby is tall. It's 2 stories tall, and the exercise and fitness room are at the upper level. Do we have that second level? Yeah, the second level. So this lobby space is open to the second story. We would envision a straight curtain wall here, so a glass wall, and the idea is that we would create a transparent space up against the existing historic facade. So we would not be altering the historic facade, we'd essentially be building a glass box in front of it. Throughout the process, we've had numerous sit-down meetings with the State Historic Preservation Office regarding the approach to the design. And some of their comments essentially indicated to us that they really want to leave the west side of the building untouched, intact. It's a significant facade of the building. Perhaps we can make some accessibility upgrades for access at the street level. This would be an opportunity to build. The addition is on this north side, but they asked us to be historically sensitive to the existing facade. So in essence, by covering it and making the existing exterior facade part or an element of the interior of the lobby, we could maintain all of the architectural components. It would be just a translucent space. And then they did also comment that the addition in its final iteration architecturally, they actually don't want it to look like the existing building. They want it to have a different aesthetic because they want it to be very clear separation between the original historic building and the new addition.
Now, a question from Ms. Coe?
I noticed that you said you were going to first you remove SCTV into another area. Have you spoken with SCTV and asked them if they were interested in doing that? And what is the cost associated with moving all that equipment from one place to another place? Is that incorporated into your master plan?
At one point, we did sit down with SCTV and we talked to them about their needs and how we could potentially accommodate them here in the center. So yes, we've had preliminary conversations. If a plan such as this goes forward, obviously there's many iterations of design and detailing that still has to happen, and discussions with the partners, so to speak. There's many vested entities in the building. I'm sorry, the second part of your question was? Oh, the cost. Our preliminary cost to fit out the new space, we're estimating about $350,000, $375,000 to fit the space out for SCTV, and then we haven't figured out the details of who actually moves their equipment. However, we have a soft cost item in the budget for moving and relocation.
Excuse me, Ms. Coe, you asked your, well, we'll come back. We'll come back to, Ms. Coe, we'll come back to it. We have other, thank you, Ms. Coe. Thank you, Ms. Coe. We'll come back to that in a second. My suggestion that the members of the board had some questions is that we continue with those questions, and then we'll go back to the audience and let you ask your questions. Give everyone a fair shake, absolutely. Is there any other questions for the board? And then we'll go back to the public audience. Nancy.
The space that we're talking about for SCTV, what is the total square footage of that in terms of if it was built like this but not used for SCTV, what could the additional space be towards senior center needs?
Well, we have some flexibility in the size of that space because it can grow or shrink, but it would probably be about 4,000 square feet.
For the one floor?
For that space at the lower level. However, if it wasn't going to be dedicated for SCTV usage, it's not really particularly ideal for program usage. So chances are, if SCTV hypothetically were to be in another location, we'd recommend that that space not be built, and that would be slab on grade construction in that area.
Another question. Could you go to the parking slide? Because I think there was a lot of reference tonight at the public hearing in regards to that schematic that was drawn for illustrative purposes and had a wall that people would need to turn around in, and I don't believe that's an option at all anymore.
Yeah, that design was an option that we put together about a year ago, and it did have two single entrance locations. It had an entrance off of Station Street, which was two-way in and out and gave you access to the upper level. And then it had an entrance off of Railroad Street, which was a single entrance, went down and was in and out and gave you access to the lower level. Since that time, the town has engaged a professional to put a number of different options together for the design. Those are available through Jeff. There's actually three-dimensional renderings. It's actually a pretty impressive effort, including design for a garage which extends down the full length of Railroad Street behind these commercial properties and provides a huge number of parking spaces. So I know there's a number of iterations of the parking garage design. This was actually an on-grade design concept where we were actually pushing the edge of the parking out to the edge of Railroad Street, and we were picking up a center aisle of parking. So you'd ramp up from Station Street and then have the potential to go out into the rest of the parking. So it's elevated, it's at grade, it would be filled, there would be no lower level, and I don't recall the count. I think it was about 65 cars. Yes, in this particular on-grade parking solution, it was circular parking, so you could go in, you could go around and come out. Right. And frankly, I mean, again, this is a hot button topic, but it was our professional position that this approach was relatively cost effective, provided about 65 cars, at grade without having a deck, and would meet a good portion of the day-to-day day-to-day parking need directly adjacent to the building. Essentially doubles, let's say, the hypothetical 32 cars that are there minus the car spaces that are occupied by adjacent businesses. The parking issue is also, again, it's a hot button issue. As a professional who designs senior community centers, it's our goal to get as many parking spaces adjacent to the building as possible, and we try and increase the amount of accessible spaces adjacent to the building. But there is some kudos to the downtown district, the Main Street group's approach that, parking is in the entire neighborhood, and there is parking. There's some parking at the street, there's limited parking at the street, and there's a lot of parking across the way. Now, the goal of this scheme was to create this drop-off so that the lower lots could be used in a true valet type purpose when you had larger events. So whether it was by golf cart or by vehicle or by bus, people could be shuttled regularly back and forth to the lower lots to handle large capacity items. Obviously, this is a management issue and it's an operations issue, but
Boy Scout issue.
Or Boy Scouts, Eagle Scouts, but if they have their license. But again, the creation of the accessible drop-off and access is an apparatus. It's a tool to provide ease of access from remote lots.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions before we can come back to the Board of Selectmen too?
I just have one,
Mike.
Lisa. The pull-off of Station Street, is Station Street going to stay a one-way street, or is that, I've heard in the past, some discussion of that going to a two-way street?
In this particular iteration of the design, we felt strongly that Station Street should be converted to two-way traffic. There's enough width there, but there are some issues that have to be addressed in that there's parking along the street from the commercial, for the commercial buildings across the way. Obviously, not necessarily financial compensation, but there would have to be allocation of parking to offset that direct access parking. But two-way access on Station Street is pretty essential to having a drop-off here, because you want to be able to come in either way, drop off, and then go back down and get into the parking area.
And I should have been more specific, approved or authorized two-way driving on Station Street, as opposed to some of the wanderers that we have going the wrong way on the one.
Well, in that case, maybe it's better to
Let's do it the right way.
Maybe it's better to legalize it.
Yes. In this case, yes.
Thank you. Sean?
So I'm interested in hearing more about these parking options that we haven't heard about yet.
Sean, at this point, I'm not sure there are a lot of options. Again, there were conceptual plans prepared for various options of parking deck, one going over Railroad Street to increase capacity, one going over the property to the south to increase capacity. But as far as I know, there was no traction on those options. They do create additional parking, but there would be a requirement, obviously, with the property to the south to share that parking in some way, shape, or form. It does obviously create more parking. It does increase the cost of the parking deck, too, pretty much linearly with the number of spaces. So the budget we have available is really for a 66-space parking garage. One concern I just want to raise in terms of the three-tier option, you can see this dotted line represents the property line for Railroad Street. We have a pretty consistent right-of-way here, at least based on the concept plan. We haven't looked at this in perspective of where that property line exists and how this street was to be developed as part of the center zone. In other words, there is supposed to be circulation. This deck would restrict the width, the experience, sidewalks, what have you, on Railroad Street in a future development, so that's a consideration. So again, because it's concept and we don't have all that detail survey, that's why I'm somewhat hesitant to say that that's possible without affecting the overall center plan.
Jeff, I've kind of lost track here, but what was the price tag on this configuration that you have up there now?
This one actually represents a larger, this is an at-grade parking lot, which would be a lower cost option. I think we had a number in there of $600,000 for site development as part of the on-grade option. The parking deck would be more like a 1.3 million.
And that was how many spaces?
66.
And this is how many?
This was something less than 66, about 60.
So for 6 spaces, it's the difference between 600,000 and 1.3
Again,
million?
this is a concept plan. This doesn't provide for things like dumpsters, and there may be other service facilities. And, you know, there's other spaces that may need to be carved out of this once you get into final design.
So less than, I guess.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, Rich, and then we'll get to the public again.
I just wanted to, I know this is up in the, on the website, but if you haven't looked at this, this was something the study committee had put together early on, and this is a summary of some photos of all the other facilities they visited for, the facilities, and I think that would give you some good guidance as to the type of spaces and the finishes and so forth that they use, and a lot of those ideas have been incorporated in our concepts here, but this is a good document.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you for those who put in so much effort over the years. I know Rich gave me I asked him just how many times did you meet, and there were 32 meetings of the Public Building Committee, 10 meetings of the Senior Center Subcommittee, site visits to 4 facilities, 4 presentations, 4 studies, needs assessment, feasibility study, handicap accessibility review, and reduced phased approach study, and there are also hearings at the Board of Selectmen. So there's a tremendous amount of work, and I want to thank all those who participated in that. I'll open it up to come back to public hearing from the audience if people have questions. And we'll start with Lucille, and then we'll get to you. That's a great question. The question, just to repeat it for SCTV, was during the construction of Eno, will the site be able to be used in some capacity during the construction phase? And if we could get some comments on that.
The simple answer is yes, but it would probably be limited in certain phases of the construction. So at times, parts of the building are going to have to be shut down. And that will require a detailed phasing plan that would happen if the project went forward prior to construction. Physically, this is probably about a year-long construction project. You know, maybe it's 14 months, maybe it's 10 months, depending on depending on the phasing. So if we move, hypothetically, let's say we squeeze some programs into the front of the building and provide temporary access from the street side for a few months, and then we do construction, and then we got to move everybody back. Some of that shifting of programs, you know, could extend the proposed construction time, but that's something we'd look into. But magnitude of construction time is about a year. And no more than 14 to 16 months, I would say.
Thank you.
But no less, probably no less than a year.
Thank you. Mary Ellen? Oh. Are there any other? Yes, Pat.
Well, then again, those are issues we'd have to resolve, but again, it's possible we can get access to part of the DOT sites. Yeah, so I think that's something that we'd accommodate. But you're correct, the site is a tight site, and we'd definitely be working and moving people around to make it happen. You know, again, if this is the direction that the town goes in.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the public at this point? Are there any other questions or comments from the Board of Selectmen at this point?
Just for the sake of clarification
Sure.
for everybody watching, how would the bidding process proceed on this if we were to choose either site? You know, maybe Tom, you could address that, or, I mean, does it go out to bid for
We do have bidding
estimates, or-
requirements that are required by our ordinances.
No, I know, but
Yeah, so I'll let
what
Rich
goes
speak
first?
to that.
How long does that take?
Generally, as Tom mentioned, I think his time frame for construction is pretty accurate. One thing we would expect to do with contractors is have them use part of the Iron Horse Boulevard lots as staging. Those lots are under our control, even though they're state-owned. As far as the construction, this job, would be considered a major project under our procurement procedure, so it would go to full bid. It'd be a full bid package. Prevailing wages would apply. We would pursue grants if possible, and as you may know, we do have a design grant. As I mentioned before, we have not spent any design money.
Right.
So we have an allocation from the community as well as from the state of Connecticut. So those funds would pay for full development of plans, specifications, and bid documents.
Just a follow-up to that, Rich, would that include the parking deck as well? So understanding options in terms of that aspect of the...
If you were to select an option with a deck, we would have to, I'm assuming you'd assign this project to the Public Building Committee, and they would give you some guidance on how they wanted to do that. That could be incorporated into the full design, or it could be bid as a separate contract. Yeah.
Well, maybe Tom, are they really two phases? I mean, don't they go together, the parking deck and the renovation?
Yes, but the actual construction could be, sequentially. So you could do the construction and then do the garage thereafter. You could, in theory, do the garage first, but that makes your site tight. You really don't want to necessarily do it that way. And frankly, the parking structure is a very unique construction type. So more than likely, it would be a separate entity, meaning a separate project, a separate contractor. It could be done by one. I'm not saying it can't be done.
If you look at your big projects, such as Penn Square, West Hartford, smaller scale projects, storage project, out in town, there were multiple contractors and try to style your bid documents so that your specialty, most efficient, most cost-effective contractor can do certain parts of the work. But that's something the Public Building Committee would look at.
Well, I'm thinking about what Mr. Ornstein said about there might be some specific parking needs that we need to take into account.
I kind of back off on this garage. This is a depth.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would have a specialty design consultant. That would be the first thing. Or you would have a roof designer who would solve that work.
Yeah.
And as you do on many buildings, you probably know, a building like this build, you would have a lead architect, but you would probably have 4 or 5 professional specialty people, your HVAC, electrical. So that's fairly common when you put specialties on those design phase as well as construction.
I'm just thinking about putting a number on this, and are we putting the number on, including the parking deck, not including the parking deck?
All of your projects have that breakdown.
Yeah, we did include the parking deck as an option in the numbers.
Can we go back to that slide with the...
I want to clarify.
Sure,
So,
Nancy.
I'm sorry, my question around the grant, Rich, that you were mentioning, and we were talking about a site selected, the grants used to get, more concrete numbers out of this. So my question is, if it's the Eno site that is picked, as part of that grant to figure out exactly what the costs are with a project, if it were at Eno, can we get the building part of it and deck part of it really nailed down? That's, I think, what I was really trying to...
Nancy, we had, as part of our budget, actually included a line item for a construction manager advisor. We would like to get that kind of an individual involved at the pre-engineering phase of the project. When we start refining the design, we would get a professional estimator to actually prepare the estimates so we know where we stand early in the project. So if we need to make adjustments to the program, we could do that. That's typically how it's done. In a CM-involved project, we do rely on the architect at some level in the beginning to prepare estimates, but the CMs are usually closer to the numbers, to the trends, and have can really break the project down to the nuts and bolts, so to speak, and get the right numbers. We're actually, for the school projects, for example, right now, the building committee is part of the scope of services for the architect. And the architects in general include a professional estimator, so we can get a refined number for the budget at an early stage in the project.
Okay, that's great. That's, as I said, it would be to be sure that we had that building cost, but also a debt cost. Yeah.
Correct. The debt costs actually were developed, again, the concept drawings and the estimates were prepared by a very specialized consultant called Desmond Associates. It wasn't part of Tom's contract. We hired him separately, and I feel fairly confident in the numbers that he's provided to us for the deck.
Thank you.
Do you know what the cost difference would be if the SCTV space were not included? You mentioned that would be a different construction.
The fit out in the estimate that Tom provided, I think, was about $375,000. So if that space was not excavated for SCTV, and it's really the footprint of that space is really predicated on the exercise space. I think we calculated about $375,000.
Okay.
Getting awful close.
And it's probably more space than they actually need. They presently only have about less than 2,000 square feet in the building.
Yeah. So
that space would actually be larger than they would need.
Yeah.
Well, it just sounded like that was a significant construction change. You said it would just be on a slab instead of a two-level.
Yeah, it would save, let's say, $300,000 to $400,000 if we did not make the allocation of space for SCTV in the scheme. However, do keep in mind that means the SCTV would in theory have to go someplace else. There would be relocation and fit out costs associated with that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Your numbers don't look exactly and start playing with those numbers like square footage because that SCTV is contemplated with all the black box studio space. So you don't have to finish it with specialized lighting and all basically it's the foundation wall. So you're saving instead of taking the foundation and putting the lights in it. Put a slab of your outfitting cost to move that SCTV equipment around and outfit it. That's what the cost is.
Are there any other questions from the Board of Selectmen at this point?
I mean, directionality, what are you looking for tonight?
Well, let's make sure we're done with the public audience, and then, is there anyone in public audience that still has questions at this point? John?
I had one question on this. It's John Schaefer. I had one question on this scheme that's been developed now for the reduced square footage of Eno. At one time, we had talked about, or there was talk about, breaking the program down and phasing the addition to Eno. Is that still the case? Is if we decided in 10 or 15 years we needed more room, will this reduced building footprint adapt to adding on some more space?
Excellent question.
Sorry. That's actually a good question, and one of the concerns that we have is that what we propose meets what we're calling the 30-year needs of the center, and the goal in our programming study was to provide programming space to get over the baby boom hump and get to the backside where, in theory, based on projections, the population will go down, the senior population will go down, and then it will start and it will climb at a more reasonable rate. barring any unforeseen population growth here in Simsbury. But yes, no, the challenge at this site is it is landlocked. There's a possibility you could put an addition on in the south side of the building, so you could accommodate a little bit of expansion, but unless you planned, let's say, the parking structure or the parking deck so that it could be built on top of, expansion is a challenge. So we would, ensure, or we would want to ensure that this scheme, minus the few wants that we as your professional team have seen other communities use via other flexible spaces, we would ensure that the program space will meet the long-term needs of the community, at least for the next 30 years plus.
All right. Are there any other questions from the public? I want to make sure everyone feels that they had adequate opportunity to speak. Ed, did you have a comment?
That's another good question. As a part of the renovation, the facility would really have to be brought up to full accessibility. But the reality is it will not be 100% accessible. It's inviable to make the mezzanine space here in the auditorium 100% accessible. And in some other spaces, we would actually have to use alternative sensitive approaches to accessibility, like automatic door openers, because SHPO would prefer we not, let's say, widen a door opening to accommodate, let's say, a bigger door, or clearances. More importantly, clearances to get access to the door. So we may have to provide more automatic door openers to interior doors so that we don't compromise the historic nature of the building. But for this to be a successful solution, the building, essentially all of the program spaces that serve the center have to be accessible. And there, yes, there is cost associated with those renovations. We have our costs broken down into light, moderate, and heavy renovation costs. Light renovation costs being, paint and new carpet, and we have about 1,000 square feet of space that'll cost about $50,000. We have some moderate renovation space, which is about 1,500 square feet, which would be $100 a square foot. So that's the type of renovation. We have $150,000 for those types of renovations. And then we've budgeted about $600,000 for what we call heavy renovation space, about 4,000 square feet of space that's really gutted. That's like the kitchen space and those areas. And then interior renovation space associated with upgrading the existing elevator and actually providing a second elevator. All of the proposed schemes would include a second elevator on the east side of the building. So now there's two options to communicate with the second floor, and that second elevator would also communicate, the entrances with the parking garage with the SCTV space.
Rich, did you have a question or something to add?
That is one of the reasons an addition has to go on. If you look at the square footage in your concrete report identified that, there is enough square feet. But when you greatly sacrifice all the historical behaviors, this will be very different homes. So let's say if you look at those doors on the stage, I don't think it will be anything to check out. So, this room would have to be sure that there are automatic openers and so forth on this side. Perhaps that other ways to communicate with the building. So we're going to run a very delicate balance to keep the key historic aspects and the idea to provide all the services.
Hiram, did you have a comment?
Just a quick comment to John's question with regard to expansion possibilities. You take a look at the downtown plan that was done originally. If the garage, or deck, I'm sorry, is carefully considered before it's constructed, so that construction could actually take place on top of the deck. It's on the plan. It's already there. Emil Dahlquist from DRB talked about that a couple of years ago when we first looked at the Desmond plan. So there's a tremendous amount of potential as long as that's designed into the deck from the beginning. So just wanted to point that out. Thanks.
So we can go up from whatever deck we build, and that could be the extra room on the site.
Right.
But that could be anticipated in the construction to phase in later. Yes? Okay.
Lisa, I just
Yeah, Sean?
So, Mickey, we've talked a lot about costs and everything else. From a programming standpoint, we talked a couple weeks ago about needs. I know Jeff spoke on behalf, but are you comfortable that these revisions do meet the basic needs and are getting you in a better spot than we are today?
Yes, I am. Actually, we went from 21,000 square feet, I believe, down to 8, and yet we're all space that we needed was empty, so.
Okay.
Let me clarify that. The program calls for 22,000 square feet of senior center space. In the scheme, we're only adding 8,000 square feet.
Right.
So we're adding 8,000, and then we're modifying the rest of the existing space in this building that accommodates the senior center needs.
The challenge in this building is the square footage is here. But since we have dedicated space such as they are, we have historic entrance space such as the whole the marble centers and this move out of the 22,000, about 13,000 is not really flexible.
Yep.
So we have about 9,000 left, 8,000 left plus
Another 8 or 9. So
17,000.
yeah. To like 17, yeah.
But from a usable space standpoint, we're almost doubling the capacity that we have today from a senior center programming standpoint, which is significant. Again, not exactly what we talked about from the beginning, but a significant increase. Okay, that's interesting.
Well, we've been going for about 3 hours. Or any last licks? All right. My suggestion to the board, and I'm happy to accommodate any requests you want, we can take action tonight. It is on the agenda. My suggestion is that we place it on the agenda for our next Board of Selectmen meeting for a decision. In terms of what I need in just working on the budget, I need a number as a placeholder in the capital budget. That number can be for this year as it was planned for. So I would need a number and a site if you're inclined to go forward this year. The other option is if you feel there needs to be more study and you want to push it off, that is an option as well. But those decisions do need to be made fairly, which is why we've had 4 discussions like this recently from the center. So if folks could please consider that as an option. If there are any questions or information you feel you need before that, get that to me or to Tom Cook or Rich Zawitsky or Jeff, and we can try and get you the answers before the next meeting. There were, we are really only discussing the 2 sites right here. Anyone feels other sites need reconsideration. That could be the one was raised today, the Performing Arts Center and Bushy Hill were raised tonight in public audience. I don't know if people want to revisit any of those options, but we would need to know that.
Have we had any input from the PAC board on this?
Yes, we did get a letter from the Performing Arts Board long ago from Dave Ryan, who said the PAC was interested in exploring the option. We have in the feasibility study, there is some schematics on the Performing Arts Center. There was a vote from the subcommittee. When they voted, there were 9 members who were voting for a new facility location. 4 selected the Bushy Hill Stratton Brook Road site. 3 selected a new site in Simsbury Center, Broad. 1 selected a new building at the Performing Arts Center, and 1 selected either Bushy Hill Stratton or a new facility at Eno. So that we, like, as we hear tonight, there wasn't an overwhelming consensus for any one situation. We've heard from a broad group, and even when they took the vote, there was broad considerations. But it was certainly considered by the performing arts. They were consulted. We did have the letter from Dave Ryan. I'm sorry, I thought that was in your packet. I'll make sure we get that.
We got that before.
Yeah, it was probably a while ago. I just,
Oh, okay.
We've got it.
yeah, that was a while ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was last summer when we talked about the PAC, and I think we had asked for more information. I'm not sure we ever got it.
I did ask Dave Ryan, and he resent me that letter recently, so I know that it's been under consideration. I don't know, you want more information from the architects or from the...
I think it's what we asked for this summer.
Well, I was more concerned with their opinion regarding the loss of parking. If we use the DOT site, we are taking parking away from events that are at the PAC board, and I didn't know if they had any comment on that aspect of it.
Well, this was open to the public, and they certainly...
No, I know. I didn't know if we had heard anything in addition to...
Yeah, I don't have any more information than what Ferg said in the letter from Mr. Ryan at this point. Of course, their opinions are welcome, and if people want us to reach out to the PAC board and get a letter for Monday with specific questions from them, we could certainly put that forward to the chairman.
Yeah, I think they should weigh in on that. I think Sherry's right in asking about this. We should know if for some reason we do pick that site. I'd rather have asked them ahead of time.
We did ask them ahead of time.
No, the parking thing.
Well, specifically about the DOT site and the loss of parking.
So the question you would like asked of the Performing Arts Center is if we choose the DOT site, what impact
would it have on
their events?
Yeah, would that impact their ability to get major events?
Yeah, we heard from the Women's Club, obviously.
Okay, we can certainly make that request. I don't know if I don't know that we'll get a full board consideration then, but we can certainly get the chairman and the...
maybe the chairman will just...
Mr. Vincent's...
Doesn't have to be anything formal, but they can...
Opinion, absolutely. And invite them to come to the next meeting to give comment if they have that. Tom, do you happen to write that down by... Yes.
I also just wanted to mention, too, when people were making comments, that I thought of the Meadow study that we're all working on right now that included some fair site, some parking / fair site. So there's other things that have happened since we last
consulted with the PAC.
Exactly, in terms of that aspect of sort of development down in that area, passive recreation use. So I think that knowing that plan, and again, it's a phase plan as well, but that's something that is gaining some momentum and has some funding towards moving forward. And I know, Jeff, you're supposed to share some more information with us on the costs and the phasing in regards to that. So I think it would be...
The costs on what?
The Meadow, Simsbury Meadows, yeah. So I just, having that knowledge of that, which we did not have before, I think is helpful in making that decision around the idea of replacing parking.
You would like to make sure that the Performing Arts Center has a copy of the Meadow plan?
Well, they were involved. I know that, I can't remember exactly who was at that.
But you would like an updated opinion from the Performing Arts Center and the impact of loss of parking if we choose the state lot site, given that there are other options at the Meadows?
Yeah, I think they're aware of that, but I agree that it would be a good idea to have them weigh in on the DOT site.
Well, we can certainly request either a letter or their attendance at the next meeting to ask them. We can certainly make that request.
Tell that Ryan guy 5 minutes or less.
Yeah, that's it.
5 minutes. Look at them, 5 minutes.
No PowerPoints, no nothing.
Do you request that we have members of the Performing Arts Center at our next meeting? I don't know if they're available, but I can certainly make it.
If they want to, they may decide not to respond, but that's it.
Would you like me to extend the invitation for them to come?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's fair to them.
Sure.
If they choose not to, or if they choose not to respond, then at least we've extended it.
Right, I think we should ask them.
Sure. I just have one more request.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about SCTV or not SCTV. Can we just get that added to this slide? So 6.2, is it really 5.8? Can we just in the next couple weeks just make sure that that's firmed up? Because I mean that's interesting. Because if there is movement with that, having some more concrete numbers around that might be helpful for us as we make this decision.
Sean, so you're asking for numbers. If we move SCTV site, what options does it give us and what expenses are associated with the move?
Correct. So what does it do to the cost? And
the cost of the building.
We've looked at that. So just to firm that up. So is it 300,000? Is it 400,000? I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Do you have that?
Just
You
get
get
more
that?
comfort with that.
Okay. All right.
And again,
Good
I
question.
don't know if it's possible, but I think that's important as we weigh this.
No, like I said, what we've been trying to do is lay out obstacles and opportunities, knowns and unknowns, and to the extent we can get as much answered, we should. And so that's why I'm appreciative for you for raising these meetings so that we can gather the information the board needs to make its decision. At this point, I am curious as what the board thinks are still on the table for consideration. Do we want to have a conversation about that, Chris?
Well, I'll share my perspective. First of all, I thought this hearing was great. Tremendous amount of people here, diversity of perspective, well-spoken, and just enough passion to keep it interesting. Here's my conclusion, and I do believe the time has come to invest the 6 to 8 million for a senior center. But my conclusion tonight is neither of these options, both of them are acceptable. With both options, we could have a senior center that would work, but neither one of them are acceptable to me. And let me talk first of all about the one that is easiest to talk about, which is the DOT site, which I do think is so central to so many plans that we have relative to economic development, that to use that site exclusively for a senior center is really to do damage to something that is central to our planning. So the DOT site, to me, as exclusively for a site for the senior center doesn't work. And then secondly, if you look back on the subcommittee that worked on the senior center, which I think we all agree did a great job, which certainly was reinforced looking at all the work that they did. They were all over the place in terms of what sites they thought were perfect, but there was a very clear consensus that emerged. Eno was not an appropriate site for the senior center. And they actually did identify in terms of their highest priority would have been the Stratton Brook one, as well as some other sites. So there was a very strong statement to the comments that we've heard about Eno tonight, that Eno just would not reach a threshold for the investment of money that we put into it to really fully meet the needs of a senior center with the best investment of dollars. I do think, and I think there was a very good statement tonight that in terms of preserving Eno, that's more how it's designed than necessarily doing anything. But I do have a lot of concern about renovations to this building not impacting what really is one of the cornerstone buildings and experiences in the center of town. So with that said, the direction that I would tend to go is ideally I would like us to look or reevaluate, and actually the evaluations are there, and some of the other sites actually did come out higher than the DOT site. I would like to see us reevaluate a few of the other sites. I personally do like the idea of doing this downtown as opposed to outside of town, but I would be open to relooking at the Stratton site. But for me personally, I'd like to look at a couple of the other sites downtown. Or option B is we look at a senior center on the DOT site that's integrated with some retail development. Or if push comes to shove and I have to vote between these two sites, I'm going to vote for the DOT site. So that basically is my perspective and where I would be coming from.
Thank you. I know in this document here, and perhaps I could ask you about this, this is the feasibility study for a new senior center, Simsbury, Connecticut. It did rank the senior centers in terms of project site recommendation, and Eno received the first at 88. The Performing Arts Center received the second at 87. Bushy Hill Stratton Brook at 80. Iron Horse Boulevard 80. Library 69, but I think that's off the table. Does anyone think that's still on the table? Okay. International Skating Center at 69, and Drake Hill Place at 62. I don't know if these are the most up-to-date rankings, and if you could speak to that.
Yeah, those rankings were basically magnitude rankings. I can't tell you that an 87 is significantly better than an 86. It was just what it did is it narrowed, it created a short list that made a lot of sense. And that short list was Performing Arts, the Iron Horse Boulevard site, the Bushy Hill Stratton Brook site, Eno, and I believe there was actually one other. I'd have to go back. I don't have the file with me this evening.
You had the four, Eno, Performing Arts, Bushy Hill, Iron Horse Boulevard as the four main ones, and then Library International, Drake Hill as subsidiary ones.
I do understand that there were a number of other reasons. Our team felt strongly, the professional team felt strongly, the Performing Arts Center was a good site, and it offered a lot of intergenerational opportunities at that site. Really liked that site, but there were additional costs associated with developing at that site because we had to create additional parking. We were displacing. There's site development that needs to coordinate between all of the unique programs that are going on there, but it did offer some unique programming opportunities.
But that was not, interestingly enough, that was not something that the subcommittee seemed interested in pursuing. There was only one person.
I can't comment on all the decisions that were made. The other issue is there was a lot of groundswell. There was a lot of support for the Bushy Hill Stratton Brook site. The interesting thing about that site was that its location is actually central to the population demographic. If you look at the majority of residences, it is to the west of the Route 10 corridor, and it was going to sit right at intersection of two main connecting roads. My understanding is the problem with that site is environmental. It sits on the aquifer. There's been, over the years, many different proposals on that site, including a high school. I think at one point way back that was a considered site.
That was a really sore subject. But
yeah, but I guess the point is that development in the aquifer zone has some, real challenges. I would, as a professional, I would tell you I don't think it's impossible. However, I think it poses issues that are very hard to dispute from a health safety standpoint.
Yeah, one question I did receive today, and I just didn't know the answer to it. What consideration was given to Simsbury Farms? Was any consideration given to that site?
Yeah.
That was from a constituent who asked me this morning.
Yeah, Lisa, I'll talk to that in a minute, but I did want to say one thing about the Performing Arts Center site and how it might have ranked at the time, and that the Bushy Hill Stratton site was still on the table, and you've removed that since. So people might look at that site differently. As far as your question about Simsbury Farms, we found that that's not central, certainly neither to the center of the town nor to the center of population, and there is no public sewer out there, and the soils are very poor. And they are also at the limits of the public water. And as you may or may not know, we do boost the water supply up in there now. So that would require, with a larger senior community center, a major water booster pump, as well as, I'm not quite sure how the sewer would work, but it would either require a pump station and considerable length of pipe.
Considerable additional costs.
Yeah, there were costs, and it was not centrally located.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful to know. Is there any, as we get, for the public may be interested, we know that Chris is not interested in either site. Is there anyone who's interested in the Board of Selectmen really weighing other sites before we make our decision on Monday, or if I could get people's thoughts there? Yeah, Sean.
I mean, I've always been extremely interested in the PAC site because I think it's an opportunity for a community center and not just a senior center. And it's not just because I'm 34 years old. It's because I think it makes sense for the entire community when you look at that. Plus, I think there's an opportunity to turn the PAC board loose and say, go raise $1 million and help us out with this and take some of the tax burden away. And I think that has always made a lot of sense to me. And that's why we talked about it last summer. And I think we kind of collectively lost focus on that. And we got to these two spots. And I mean, if I have to pick one tonight, I'm more inclined to go with this building because, my heart's in this building and I'm, grew up in this community, and I would hate to see it not get used. But, I'm struggling with the cost. I'm struggling with messing with the historic nature of it. The parking doesn't seem like it's a good solution for any option we come up with, no matter how hard you guys work. We've got ADA issues, we've got elevator issues, we've got lots of problems. I don't like the idea of spending $800,000 on a parking lot that we don't know what's under, and we don't know what mess we're walking into.
You make a great point. We would have to purchase that as is. You're absolutely
right. As of today, and maybe we can negotiate with the legislature, but with the group we have down there, who knows?
It's an absolute unknown. You're
You know,
exactly right.
there's a lot of unknowns, and, you know, we've got this immense pressure to make a decision because we've been talking about this
Well,
for
we
so
don't
long.
have immense pressure other than...
No, I think it's good to have immense pressure.
We do, because people, you know, I think it's fair. People expect us to make a decision, and I think we have to at some point, but that doesn't mean we should just go below $8 million because everybody says make a decision, you know, and I'm personally not going to until I'm comfortable making the decision. But, you know, I don't want to drag this out any longer, but
So what I'm hearing from you is on the table is still Eno, the State Lot site, and the Performing Arts Center?
I think it is, you know, and I think, if, you know, this community has done some pretty amazing things pretty quickly with that site, with schools, with other things. You know, we were going to drop $96 million on a school, and we found a way to do it for 40, right?
Sorry, Terry, since we're throwing you for a loop.
No, this is a great decision, or not a great decision, but a great conversation. I mean, obviously the community is going to invest a lot of money, and the solution has to feel right. One of the issues with the Performing Arts Center, and I'm just talking out loud, thinking out loud here, but one of the issues was the conflict that the senior patrons had with the idea of a sort of it morphing into a community center, and there was concerns about that happening within the senior support group. And I think that's one of the things that may have discouraged, you know, the development of that particular site. While there are many communities that have gone in that direction, we just completed Darien Center, which is very similar, a community very similar to Simsbury in size and demographic. And Darien made the decision down the road ultimately to have a senior/community center, but they had to vest their seniors in it. They had to sell the process. And it was a lot of convincing the convincing process had to provide confidence that, you know, essentially what we're seeing in all of these communities is that senior programming happens primarily between 8:30 in the morning and about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when the heavy senior programming is. And then in the case of Darien, they saw their facility had similar program spaces to a community center. They could use it for after-school programs if they needed in the shoulder hours between 3 to 5, and then in the evenings, those spaces could be used as a community source. But I think the sort of the fear that the center would not be our center as seniors, that's a real concern to the patronage who the center is supposed to support. So it's a sensitive matter, and I think that is one of the things that may have shaded the seniors from that site.
It's a fair concern.
Nancy.
I think I appreciate the idea of putting this on our agenda on the 9th, purely because I think there's some questions that need to be answered, but to the extent in which I can sort of provide some of my own personal thoughts at this time, I agree with Chris. I don't think the DOT site really does make some sense, and I look at that from the economic income loss as a result, and the work that the charrette did to identify the best use for that parcel. I think the work that the architect has already done with SHPO and looking at the use of this building, it could be done in a way that would help us keep the historic nature of the building, but still allow us to use it and celebrate the fact that this was given to us as the center and hub of our community, which I think has served us so well as a senior and community center. I certainly believe in the statements made by Main Street in regards to the mission of economic development really being married with historic preservation, and this building does speak to that. At the same time, I'd rather see the senior center stay here, and I don't think it has to do with seniors becoming this economic engine to downtown, but I do agree it's important that what they experience in using this center is integrated into the livelihood and life of the center of our town. As a building, we do have ADA issues here, so there is work that absolutely should be done to this building. and to the extent in which we should commit ourselves to doing that, but yet we would also be undertaking that while trying to do something else somewhere else doesn't seem to make sense to me. I appreciated Bud Kelly's comment on things happening in our town are never an easy decision, and it reminded me of the gavel in the book written by the former town moderator of the town, which references things like the building of the library, a lot of things that have happened in our town that have caused a lot of contention, and it is not an easy decision. I appreciate people's sympathy for us having to make that decision. Revisiting Bushy Hill to me doesn't make sense. There was a lot of public comment around that site, the environmental sensitivity of that. To me, if we renovated Eno and we were still not 100% meeting our needs and we wanted to somehow create a shared use out of what would happen at the PAC, that would allow the PAC to realize what their best use is for their space, and doing that in that fashion, it sort of becomes a good combination, I think, for sort of meeting the overall needs of the town. And so that's, I would say I will make my decision on the 9th, but if I were forced to tonight, my decision would be made for Eno.
Okay, that's good information. Cheryl, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think along those lines, again, none of these sites are ideal, and, we just have to decide as a community to do what we can for our seniors. I think it's important that we do something. This building does not serve our seniors well now. It is not accessible no matter what we do, and we have to fix it. It's not accessible for the community events we hold here, and that's important that we fix that. That being said, I think, way back when I was sitting in on the subcommittee meetings, I would have voted in the distributive model and tried to improve the PAC so that they could get their green room, and that could be a community resource for other groups in addition to the seniors, and provide additional space. Again, when we talk about music rooms and other type of programming, it would be such a wonderful fit if we could incorporate our senior population into, the very lively entertainment we have already, which I think would be a great synergy. So I think if pushed, I would say I don't think it's a good idea to take the DOT site off the table for economic development. I think we'll be opening a big can of worms for what's underneath there. And as I've sat in the meetings and listened to the, cables and lines and everything else that's underneath that site, I think we're opening ourselves up for a lot of trouble.
Well, it's an unknown. It's certainly an obstacle. Some of it's an unknown. We haven't determined it as a barrier, but you're right. It's an obstacle, and there are some unknowns there.
And there's, the whole issue with it not fitting into the codes and plans and charrettes that we've all worked so hard on and that we really believe in, to take part of that out, and say, no, we're not going to do any of that, just doesn't make any sense to me. So I think I would have to say I'd rather renovate Eno because I think we need to do it, and I think that if we can encourage the development of the PAC site and develop a shared space there for the rest of the community, I would be in favor of that.
Mike, do you have any comments at this point?
I am not interested in revisiting the Bushy Hill site. I have some concerns about the DOT site that you've already heard. I think we owe an obligation to, if nothing else, fix Eno so it is as much as humanly possible without compromising the historical integrity of this building, because it is a gorgeous building. Oh my God. To give something like this to the town just boggles my mind. But we do need to fix it. If I had to vote tonight, I would probably vote to renovate Eno. There's some different things I have some questions about, but we don't have to vote tonight, so I have some more time to think and hear some more from
I would just
folks.
ask, to the extent you have them, get them to staff as soon as possible, because they're working really hard on the budget, so I know that they're...
I know that's a concern. So that's all I
I think these are really wonderful discussions. You know, I agree with Chris that, you know, the overwhelming recommendation of the building committee was a new building, and that's why I like Sean's suggestion that we keep the PAC on, because that does give that as an option. The suggestions about Eno are wonderful as well. You're right, this is a town gem, and we want to make sure we utilize it, but Ed raised some important points about ADA accessibility, and does it make sense to have a senior center that our seniors can't access? So those are issues to consider, but I think we have a good information tonight. Well, as you get more questions and want to do it, just to put it out there, I'm going to keep it in the capital budget as we've had it for the last years, and we can change it when we have our discussions. But when you get it, just because that's due to you on the 26th, I'll keep it as is.
So just to clarify, are we putting it back to the 5.6, or are we changing it to the 8.3?
Well, it's been in the capital budget at 5.6. I can keep it there tonight, or I can up it to 8.2. You're going to have an option, whatever I recommend to you. The budget we put forward is going to be the one that we adopt as a group, so we'll have time to do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's secondary. Just real quick. I mean, as I've talked about at prior meetings, I am struggling with that, because we've been talking about this at 5.6 in the capital plan, 5.6 in the capital plan, and now we get to the decision hour and it's 8.2. You know, and I know that's been in the drawings and everything else, but it's tough. We've got to do better going forward on capital. Well, if it's 8.2, we got to start putting it in at 8.2.
Well, one of the things that I really want to commend Jeff, and you'll see in your recommendation, is there was a time when Rich had a staff of 8 people in engineering, and now it's down to 1. So they don't have the staff to do a building comprehensive plan, and so that will be coming in the capital plan to address just that concern. I think that you're right. Part of the problem in the planning has been we've done such a wonderful job in keeping costs down, but that has come at a cost.
Yeah, and
it's coming back to bite us.
Well, I mean, you know, it's been a benefit to our residents in terms of taxes, but there is a cost associated with it. So just so folks know, when they get the capital budget in their things, it might go up to 8.2. It might, but as we know from Joe Mancini, who did the financial analysis, whatever number we pick on the 9th, we can accommodate in terms of our bonding and our debt service limit. So that is a possibility. So when I give that to you on the 26th, there'll be an asterisk by it. Might change. I'll go to Mr. Arcari.
I was just going to make a comment about the costs. Obviously, we've been exploring this for about 4 years now. And when we started 4 years ago, we were in a much different economic position. As a community, as a state, we're growing. We're starting to see things improve. And as a professional, we're seeing escalation in the construction market for the first time, you know, on the magnitude of 4.5%, 5%, 6%. And as the economy increases, we just see those costs going up. So, you know, when we've revised our estimates that, you know, we had prepared in 2011 and 2013, now our estimate numbers are growing because, you know, we're looking at a 2017 construction date, and we need to make sure that the numbers that we do project, you know, we can.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is just more a placeholder so that my board understands that it's not the final number, because we won't have had a decision. I do want to thank you for pointing out, in general, that bonding costs are very low right now. And so if you're going to build, now's the time to do it. And you can get more bang for your buck if you do it under these conditions. Rich?
I think the other interesting thing about this project, in particular, is that you have to carry pretty solid numbers, because the amount of flexibility, if you want to meet the program requirements, are much less than, let's say, for our school project, and some of our recreation projects. You know, we have to look at and revisit it and reduce. But when you're doing a whole building, a larger building, you have a lot more room to play. This building, because so much has to be preserved, because you historic nature, you know, we pretty much have to do that addition. So there's a lot less flexibility than before.
That's a good point.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, but we kind of need to pick the site before we know the number. And I think Mr. Arcari made a great point. You want to look at the needs, and are we committed to meeting those needs, and what do those needs cost? So I think that's an important consideration, as we do for the schools, just as I think one of the residents made a great comment. You know, we do give a lot to the schools, and we give it not because we love children, but because it's good for a healthy community. And same with the senior center. We do it, yes, we love children, and yes, we love seniors. Take that off.
We've been up here for a long time. You got facts. That's
Okay,
all right.
we love them all.
The point is, having a strong support for our seniors is good, not just for seniors, it's part of a healthy community.
Yeah.
And having strong schools is not good just for kids, it's part of a healthy community. And we want to make sure that our whole community is healthy, and taking care of our seniors is a very important component of that.
Yes.
And I do love seniors and students, right?
For the record.
Just to clarify. All right, so we have sort of a plan at this point. We'll be prepared to vote at our next meeting, which I believe is the 9th. Yes?
March 9th?
Yeah. So we'll do that. You will get your budget books before then. I don't know what number I'll put in there, but I'll put in a placeholder, and knowing that the discussion on the senior center may change that number. But I won't put in a number that our debt service policy cannot accommodate. So it will be a number that can be accommodated, whatever that number is. And just so the public knows, that number may change during the budget discussions. Are people comfortable with that approach where we are right now? We'll follow up and invite the Performing Arts Center on the 9th to make sure that they've had an opportunity to either speak with Jeff, Rich, or even the architect before that meeting, make that at least an offer available to them so that we can make sure we have a full notice to them and that they have an opportunity to consider it a little bit more in depth before we discuss it formally.
Absolutely.
Is that any other?
No,
That works.
Well, we've been going for 3.5 hours now. Congratulations. I think this may be a record.
Not a record. No, I don't think it is.
No,
We're just
I'm not
about to
sure
get
it's
started.
still
We'll
here.
get a new one.
That's right. We've got an all-day on Saturday coming
We
up.
got an all-day around.
But so, as any last comments before I take a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
The sound system is terrible. If people were restless, they couldn't hear. I'll have a million questions tomorrow. Not that myself, and I will not be able to answer because I can hardly hear. So I hope that
We'll be back at town. And that's a great point, Mona. That's a great point. We will be back at Town Hall for the March 9th meeting, and so we will have better acoustics there. But you're right, and that's why it's important for us not to vote. Let people go back and listen to this so that they can weigh in their minds. And it's also an additional 2 weeks for them to give us comments if people have more comments. Yeah, Pat. That was not on the consideration. It was given to the town for open space, so I don't know. That wasn't part of the evaluation. I'll certainly ask Mr. Shea to see if he can answer that at a later time. Yeah. All right, so with that, we have a motion to...
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.